I'm editing this video and realize I never filmed an intro because I actually intended for part 2 and part 3 to be one video. Because in my head, I didn't realize that 75 pages of notes would translate to like more than 4 hours of video. Like, even this video is already like excessively long. Can you imagine if we had combined it with the last part? It would have been so long, we would have all perished trying to watch it. Anyway, this is the final part to my video recapping everything that happens in Daisy Haites and Magnolia Parks, the first two books in the Magnolia Parks universe. This is an incredibly detailed recap, meaning that I'm telling you literally every single thing that happened. This is video 3, so we are starting kind of like midway through the books, and we're just gonna like jump straight into things. Then we zoom over to Miss Magnolia, and it's Clara's birthday, and so Magnolia is on foxhole duty. She's dressed to impress because, you know, she takes her foxhole duties very seriously. Tom's parents will not be there because they are feeling a little like weird about this whole situation because Clara has just started dating someone new. So Sam has died, I think, like 9 months ago at this point, and so Sam's parents are feeling a little bit weird about his like ex-wife already dating someone new, so they're not going to be at his Clara's birthday party. But also Tom is feeling nervous because this is the first time he will be meeting Clara's new boyfriend. Okay, great. The guy's name is Sebastian. I don't know if I mentioned that. And so they get there and Gus is already there. Gus comes up and Gus knows that they're fake dating. And he's like, hey, what's going on between you and Tom? And Magnolia's like, it is very easy, breezy, beautiful cover girl. So that's what's going on. It's just, we're having a lovely little time. Thank you so much for asking. And then Tom introduces her to Rush Evans, who is Sam's, rest in peace, Sam's BFF. And then Rush Evans is like chatting with Jess Magnolia. Tom like has to go talk to someone else. And he's immediately asked Magnolia, he's like, oh, so you're in a PR relationship with Tom. And Magnolia's like, why would you literally say that? That's kind of like rude to say to someone you don't know that. And he's like, yeah, I do, because Tom spent the whole night staring at Clara. Meanwhile, Tom is over talking with Clara and Seb, and for some reason he winds up shoving Sebastian because he doesn't like the way he like talked to Clara about her. I don't remember exactly what happened, but Tom winds up shoving Sebastian. They fight a little bit, and Magnolia looks over and just sees how like sad Clara is, how much this is just like breaking her. And Magnolia is like sad looking at her because she recognizes herself in this like sadness from Clara, where this point where she feels so trapped between like her past and her future. Like this like great love that she had. Clara loved Sam in a way that we're told was very similar to how BJ and Magnolia loved each other. And now he's gone, and she's like trying to move forward, and it's just, there's a lot of grief in that movement forward. And Magnolia recognizes that because she also feels similarly trapped between like BJ and Tom, and she feels like Tom is like the right move for her future, but she like can't let go of her past. And so she's like, oh, I feel the sadness, although BJ is not dead, obviously. And then Magnolia goes home with Tom that night, and they sleep together again. So again, this relationship feeling less and less fake by the moment. Honestly, hasn't been fake since Grease. I don't know if it really is. A few days later, Magnolia is shopping. Every Tuesday she goes shopping on New Bond Street. As one does. You gotta keep your outfits fresh. And I feel like Magnolia is not an outfit repeater, to quote Miss Lizzie McGuire. I like feel like she's a one and done wearer. Like, what do you think she does with her clothes when she's done with them? Do you think she like donates them? Do you think she sells them? Do you think she just keeps them in her closet? Anyway, she's at the Gucci store, and who should walk in but BJ? We're actually in BJ's head during this, and he knew that Magnolia would be shopping, and he suspected she'd be at, like, Gucci's the first store he walks into to check. He had a couple options. She happens to be in Gucci, and the Gucci store is, like, empty except her, and she's trying on jeans, and, like, BJ walks over to her and is like, why are you trying on jeans? You never wear denim. You say it's, like, the working man's fabric. And she's like, but you don't think these look good on me? And he's like, no, I think they look amazing on you. You look literally stunning. I just know you will absolutely never wear them. And then she, like, gets pouty, and she's wearing BJ's bomber jacket. He, like, lost it a few weeks earlier, and he was like, I don't know where it went. But now he sees it on Magnolia, and he's like, couldn't have found a better home. He's so obsessed with her. He's so obsessed with her. This is what Christian's missing. I need Christian to be as obsessed with Daisy as BJ is obsessed with Magnolia. He winds up following her back into the dressing rooms, and he winds up kissing her in the dressing rooms per Jonah's advice. He's listening to his BFF, Joe. This is how he describes it. Then I kissed her, slowly at first, slowly like how you drink a top-shelf whiskey. Feel it in your mouth. Let it roll around for a couple of seconds before you go back for more. Bask in the flavor of my old love. My old always love. Slowly, slowly, then more. I kiss her deeper, and her breath gets caught in her chest. And I remember how much I used to love it when that would happen. So I do it more. And the shop girl knocks on the thing and is like, hi, you can't do that. And Magnolia's like, yep. And the shop girl's like, you can't have two people in there. And Magnolia's like, there's only one person in here. And then BJ laughs. And the shop girl's like, I can literally hear him in there with you. And Magnolia goes, are you saying I have a manly voice? The shop girl's like, please. Like, I just work here. Can you please stop? And then BJ's like, is the rule that we're breaking, like, that we can't, there can't be two people in a dressing room, or that we can't, like, hook up in the dressing room? Because there's, like, a lot of stuff in between that we could do. There's a couple bases we could hit if we can't do a full home run here in the dressing room. And the woman's like, you cannot be in the dressing room together. You gotta get out, my friend. And they do. And BJ gets out of the dressing room with Magnolia. And then he waits, and he's just, like, thinking about the kiss. Now he's standing outside the dressing room as Magnolia, like, changes back into her stuff, and he says, or he thinks, all I know about kissing her felt like a shower after a particularly brutal rugby game. Mom would drive me home, and I'd be so wrecked, muddied up, sore and shit. Every week, the shower would blow my mind. Like I hadn't showered in years is how it felt. But kissing her just now, I could feel the mud coming off. I, like, love that metaphor so much. That, like, kissing Magnolia again after all these years feels like the mud coming off after, like, a brutal rugby game. Because, like, what a gorgeous metaphor. What a gorgeous metaphor. Jessa is very good at metaphors. But, like, that one of my faves. And then they, like, are standing outside at the Gucci store, and Magnolia asks him to come home with her. She's like, do you want to come home with me? Like, do you want to continue what we were interrupted doing? The shop girl. And despite the fact that he would truly love to do nothing more, she's got Tom still. And he's like, no, until you are, like, fully done with Tom, until you've figured out what is happening, I am not going to come home with you. But he kisses her one more time, and he tells her to let him know once she's figured out what she wants to do. Then we have a full box set dinner. I think this is, like, a couple days later. We're seeing this from Christian's perspective. From Christian's perspective, Magnolia and BJ are acting like a couple. They're, like, holding hands. Magnolia is also still with Tom. And, like, Christian is, like, sort of aware of this. And he is confused. As, honestly, everyone is. And then Magnolia turns to Christian and she goes, hey, what happened to your necklace? And Christian says, I gave it away. Magnolia's offended. Like, that's offended. You can't just give away a gift someone gave you. It is kind of rude. And Magnolia says, to who? And Christian says, Daisy. Now Magnolia's upset, which makes BJ upset, and Christian storms off, and Henry's like, what is going on? BJ and Christian wind up, like, bickering outside, I think. Henry follows Christian outside, and Henry is like, Christian, like, Magnolia is only in love with BJ. Like, even though she's mad about this necklace, this does not mean Magnolia is in love with you. Like, I want you to get that through your thick little nog. Also, don't mess it up with Daisy just because you're pining after Magnolia. Like, it's not worth it. She is never going to choose you, okay? Look at me in my eyeballs right now. She's mad about the necklace because that's just Magnolia. But she is not picking you over BJ. You saw them together. They're coupley vibes. Do not make a dumb choice, okay? Okay? We'll see if Christian makes a dumb choice. Chances are he will. We've still got a lot of book left. Julian calls Daisy into his office, and Christian is with Miss Daisy. And he asked Daisy to help on the heist. Yay! Daisy's getting to help on the heist. She loves the opportunity to help out. And which means Christian is also going to be tagging along as well. Yay. The whole crew is going to go steal some art together. Now we're going into the heist. Are you so excited? I'm excited. We're in the Belvedere Museum. This museum in Vienna, and all of the boys, every single one except Miguel, obviously Miguel stays with Daisy, but all the rest of the boys have been sent to Paris to distract Interpol, which is why obviously Romeo and Carmelo had to help them out because they, like, needed a few more people. They are, like, getting on the plane, and Daisy needs to put on her Kevlar. She has, like, Kevlar under the dress she's wearing, and Romeo is, like, helping her put it on, and then, like, Christian shoves him aside and is like, I'm gonna put it on. There's, like, a lot of bickering between Romeo and Christian, like, at all moments. And so they fly in, and the cover story that they're doing is that Daisy is going to this gala to shop for Julian's 30th birthday. His birthday's coming up, and she's just, like, gonna do some art shopping, okay? And Christian has come with her, so that's their cover story. They get to the museum. Christian and Daisy are, like, walking around, and then who shows up at the museum but our bestie Tills? Tiller's like, hey, what are you doing here? And Daisy's like, oh, I'm birthday shopping for my brother, obviously. And Tiller's like, your brother is here, though. I literally just saw him. And Daisy's like, oh my gosh, always spoiling the surprise. Can't believe he's here also. That's so crazy weird. And then Romeo shows up, and immediately him and Christian start, like, bickering, and they start fighting over Daisy. Like, a physical altercation breaks out. And Daisy tries to, like, step in between them and stop them. And Christian actually accidentally, like, like, as he's, like, pulling back, he, like, knocks her in the face with his elbow. He, like, catches her in the face with an elbow, splits her lip. She's bleeding. Tiller comes over, like, he kind of, like, pulls her away and is like, are you okay? Like, some physical violence just happened. That's not cool. And then they're on the other side of this room, this other side of this gallery, when ring out. Yikes, yikes-a-rooski. And masked men sweep in, and they start yelling, like, this is a holdup, this is a robbery, like, nobody move. And they kill both the guards. Like, Daisy was like, this is not the plan I was told, okay? And Tiller's like, do you know who those guys are? And Daisy is like, no. And she, like, truly doesn't. She has no idea who these men are. The plan was definitely not to murder some random guards. Like, this is escalated to a place, like, we were kind of on plan, and now things have gone quite south. And Christian is on the other side of the room, and he tries to, like, cross the room to get over to Daisy, but one of the masked guys stops him. Seems like he's, like, you know, very much threatening to Christian. Then Daisy steps in and is like, hey, you might not know who that guy is, but I'm sure you know who I am, and you cannot kill me. You know that you cannot kill me because that would start say it with me, gang war. And the guy's like, for sure. They kind of, like, step around her. They don't hurt her. And then all around her, these guys are, like, ripping the painting off the wall. They're, like, pulling them out of frames, slicing them open, like, just crumpling them up. And Daisy's a little perturbed about how they're treating the art, because, like, we rob art museums respectfully, okay? Like, these are still valuable pieces. These are, like, priceless masterpieces. We treat them with care and kindness, and these men are not doing that. And then the masked guys spot Tiller, and they immediately clock that Tiller is a cop. And Daisy's stomach drops, because they're not a big fan of cops. And they're in a situation where they have all the power, and they're just gonna... And so Daisy does shoot him in the head really quick. It's, like, a very instinctual. She doesn't really, like, think it through, but she is not going to let Tiller die for just, like, being in the wrong spot. Like, he hasn't really done anything. And so she shoots the guy in the head, and as he's falling, she notices he has a tattoo of, like, a serpent, a Celtic knot on him, which is the symbol of Rosalind McMatthew's men, which is one of the no-go groups. And then all hell breaks loose because Daisy has just shot a bad guy. And then everyone at that point is now just focused on making sure Daisy gets out of there safely. So we've got Romeo and Miguel and Julian and Christian and Tiller. Actually, I think Tiller's just standing there looking confused in the corner. Everyone else is, like, really focused on making sure Daisy gets out of there safely, especially now since she shot someone. And then Daisy looks behind her over at Tiller, and he is just standing there looking confused and grateful. After that, they get in the car, and Julian is so mad at Daisy because she ruined the plan. Like, that's not how we were supposed to behave. Like, everything up until the point like, everything was going to Julian's plan, pretty much. He didn't know they were going to be so rough with the guards. Also, just, like, start ripping the paintings out of the wall. That was not totally his plan. But the thing with, like, Romeo and Christian fighting and Daisy getting injured and distracting Tiller, like, that was all part of the plan. And everything was going to plan until Daisy stepped in. And Daisy's really mad because she knows that Julian has hired Rosalind McMathen's man, and she is on the no-go list. Like, this is someone we don't interact with. And Jules says, and you killed one of them. Like, we don't interact with Rosalind McMathen's man because they're dangerous, and you just killed one. And Daisy's like, he was going to kill Tiller. And Romeo steps in and is like, Daisy, I don't know if you know this, but, like, he's a cop. And Daisy's like, so he should just die? Like, he didn't do anything. And Julian can, like, really sense the love triangle tension in the car. Like, Christian is like, hey, don't yell at Daisy. And Romeo is like, I'm in love with Daisy. He doesn't say that out loud, but, like, the tensions are there. And Jules texts Kikoa about Daisy maybe killing the guy, and it's clear that this is going to be, like, a real problem. Like, we have the beginnings of, like, a little gang war. And then Daisy looks over at me, and she looks a bit, this is in Julian's head. Julian thinks to himself. Daisy looks over to me, and she looks a bit nervous. I hate it when she looks nervous. Can't not see her as that 8-year-old on the beach, watching her parents die. It's fine, Days. I give her a smile. I'll sort it out. I love that moment, too. I love that moment. I think it's so sweet that Julian is like, you messed everything up. And then as soon as Daisy starts to get a little panicky about, like, the consequences of that, Julian is like, don't even worry about it. Like, I will fix it. Like, nothing bad is gonna happen. I'm gonna keep you safe and sound. He, like, really, truly, like, sees her very much as this, like, 8-year-old on the beach that he has to keep safe. So from then on, Daisy spends the next couple weeks, like, essentially on house arrest because Julian is, like, very worried that someone is going to try to take Daisy out. So she essentially cannot leave the compound. And she goes to school. Going to school is, like, the only thing she's allowed to do. When she goes to school, she has to bring 3 men with her. So she has Miguel, and then 2 other people from, like, the team also go with her to school to, like, protect her. Because Julian is, like, so concerned that someone is going to come for Daisy. And a couple weeks have passed. Or maybe about a week has passed. And Daisy's at the house. Christian has just left. Christian has been spending a lot of time his time with her, obviously. He leaves to go do something, and as soon as he leaves, Tiller pops by. Tiller is like, hey, and he thanks her for saving his life. He's like, oh my gosh, thank you for saving my life in that museum. Like, you did not need to do that. It was very sweet. And it's just like a sweet little moment between the two of them. Like, clearly his only agenda is like to come and thank Daisy for doing something she like truly wasn't necessary for her to do. A few days later, she's in the car with Christian when Christian all of a sudden is like, hey, we're actually going to change the plans. We are going to go to lunch with my mom. Fun. And Daisy is annoyed because she isn't in the proper outfit. She's in like this denim mini dress and like big rubber boots. And she's like, I would have picked a much better like meet the parents outfit if I had known I was going to meet the parents. Excuse me. And she just like in general, we get like a lot of internal thoughts from Daisy in this chapter, because in general, like mothers in particular make Daisy very nervous because her own mother was a monster. We will continue to find out more stories about this woman, but like a monstrous woman. Also, she just like has never been around that many women. Like Delina Brambillo is like really the only woman in her life consistently. She talks about how she was raised. She says, Santino would come to my soccer games with my dad. Happy and Smoke Show would come to my dance recitals. Koa would come to my parent-teacher interviews and my brother couldn't. I was raised by a village, but that village was made of men, with the exception of Delina Brambillo. And so she just like, it's not that she didn't have parents. Like, she had so many people around her that loved her and cared for her and made sure that like she was seen and valued, but none of them were women. And so it just makes her nervous to go meet moms. Like, on their way there, they kind of like chat. Christian and Daisy chat about this, and Christian asks about Daisy's mom, and then he explains that like, I understand, like, you might have had an evil mom, but my dad like left essentially. Like, after my sister died, he's still there physically, but like mentally, like, he's gone. He's like checked out. He's just like is a ghost, a shell of a person. We talk about Rebecca Barnes, and Rebecca Barnes is the star of the show. If I like had to rank like favorite like side characters, Rebecca Barnes would be like top of the list. Rebecca Barnes and Henry. What champions. I love them so much. Rebecca Barnes is awesome. We will find out more about her as the series unfolds, and every time we find out a little bit more, we get a little bit more excited because Rebecca is just the coolest. Let's go to the wall and talk a little bit about the Barnes family. So Christian's parents got married out of love. We have her mom, like I said, Rebecca Barnes, and her older brother, Beau, was killed at a soccer game, I believe. And so the crown fell to Rebecca. She has two younger brothers, Callum and Harvey. Callum is like an evil little, we don't like him, stinky boy. We meet him a couple times. And then we have Harvey, and Harvey lives in Australia and has like 2 kids and a wife, and is just like completely disconnected from all the crime stuff in general. But after her older brother died, the crown fell to her, and she like willingly accepted it. But when she got with their dad, Judd, they had no idea that this was going to be their life. And their dad, Judd, was a small town guy. His dad is a sheep farmer, and he met Rebecca when they were both 17, and it's very sweet. Also, the boys go and like have a pretty good relationship with their grandfather on that side, and they go and visit him quite often, and like hang out at his house, and they like, it's cell phone free. Like, he takes their phones away, and they like go fishing, and they just like live on the land, and it's very sweet and very cute. And so that's the Barnes family. Anyway, we get there, and it's Joe, Rebecca, Christian, and Daisy, and they talk a little bit about Romeo, because Rebecca's like, I've always seen you hanging out with Romeo, and Daisy's like, yeah, we broke up like 3 years ago, but like we worked together for a long time. And then Daisy's like very quick to move the conversation over to Joe and Tara, because she's like, let's distract Rebecca from making this all about me. Rebecca does ask like how long Christian and Daisy have been together, and Christian explains that they've been sleeping together for a few months, but official for 2 weeks, which like, these people are like way too comfortable with telling their family, their like parents, like very explicitly like what their sex lives are like. It's weird. And then we get the story again of Christian's sister. So Christian had a younger sister. Jonah is the older brother, and then we have Christian, and then they had a younger sister named Remy. And Remy, I don't know, maybe like 3 or 4 years younger than Christian. And when she was like pretty young, she drowned. And it was an event that just like drastically changed their family. And we get a little bit more detail about this event. We've been told about it a few times now, but we find out that Remy had been like playing, and her parents had like left the room for about 15 minutes. Remy had been playing upstairs in her room. Her parents had left like to go do something for like 15 minutes. And then Jonah and BJ were the ones who found her in the pool. And it's particularly weird because the pool was an indoor pool, and it was locked, and she didn't know the code to the door. Okay? I believe something suspicious is happening with this. This is another thing that we haven't gotten full closure on, and I'm suspicious of it. And I just want to point that out because I feel like something happened with this pool that we don't have all the information on. Anyway, the lunch goes like pretty well. Rebecca's nice. Daisy has a nice time. A few days later, Christian and Daisy are out at the club out of the club, Christian and Daisy, like, across the room. They're both, like, chatting with friends. It's, like, really no big deal. Okay? They're, like, having a nice time. When shots ring out, and Christian immediately freaks out because he doesn't know where Daisy is. Like, he was with Daisy earlier in the evening, but now he's not with her anymore. The club is obviously crowded. And then he spots her across the room, and she's covered in, like, sobbing, crying, like, screaming, crying, and yelling at Declan. And he can also see that there's a girl on the floor just, like, out, like, in a puddle of her own. And Daisy is, like, trying to help her, but Declan's trying to, like, pull her out of there. And then Julian, like, picks Daisy up, and she's fighting him. She's, like, screaming and kicking and punching. And then Rome grabs, Christian is watching all this from the other side of the club. Then Rome grabs Daisy's face. Christian is, like, finding his way over there. And Rome is holding Daisy's face, and he is, like, talking to her and, like, calming her down. And Christian finally reaches them, or is, like, close to them, and he's watching as Romeo and Daisy, like, walk out of the club, like, hand in hand. And Miguel sees Christian, and he's like, come on, let's go, we're getting out of here. And Christian's like, I'm gonna go. And Miguel knows what's happening, because Miguel has his eyes on Daisy all the time, and so he knows this whole love triangle situation. And he turns to Christian, and he goes, it's just a reflex between the two of them. Like, it's just a reflex. But Christian's still like, I'm gonna go home. And so he leaves separately while Daisy is getting, like, expeditiously shoved in a car and taken away. Then we get a little text message. I don't tell you a lot about the text messages because most of them are, like, not that notable, but we get this text message. We get an all book between Julian and this, like, no-name number, and he's just texting this mystery number to see if she's okay. Were you out at the club tonight? And she's like, no, I was at home. And he's like, good. Then we jump over to Daisy, and Daisy is, like, kind of, like, coming to after the shooting. She was not, like, physically injured. She didn't actually, like, go unconscious, but she kind of, like, lost track of herself in this shooting. She completely and totally froze, which isn't like her. The girl that was shot was, like, right next to her and was dead immediately. There was, like, nothing she could have done. But Daisy also knows those bullets were meant for her, and they were, like, not far from her. And now she's at home, and she realizes she doesn't know where Christian went. Christian and her arrived at the club together, and now she's like, where is Christian? And Miguel is like, he left. And Daisy's like, he just left. And Miguel was like, what was he supposed to do? And he gestures over at, like, Daisy and Romeo and how they're like they're still, like, touching. There's this instinct for them to kind of, like, gravitate towards each other in these times of crisis. And, like, Daisy didn't even realize it was happening. And she's like, I need to see him. Like, I need to go to him right now. And she is, like, getting ready to leave. And Julian's like, literally, you're not leaving this house. Like, someone is actively trying to kill you. And Daisy is, like, fighting with him. And Julian is like, you are not going to, after that girl died, okay? Her death is not going to be in vain. You are going to stay in this house, okay? And stay safe. Don't even worry about it. Because a moment later, someone knocks on the door. And all guns are immediately pointed at the door as someone opens it. Christian walks in, and he goes, whoa! As, like, he's just, like, surrounded with firearms. Not my warmest welcome. And Julian says, we're not the biggest fan of deserters here. And then Daisy's like, can we have some space to talk? And Julian's like, yeah. And so they go into Julian's office, and Daisy is just, like, kissing Christian's face. She's just, like, so grateful that he's alive and that he's fine, and she's just, like, wanting to check in with him. And Christian's pissed. Christian's in a bad mood. And he says to Daisy, are you effing around with me? Just using me until you get back with Rome? And Daisy's like, no, I, like, want you. And she explains that it is just, like, reflex, and she tells the whole hotel story. Her and Romeo, when they were, like, 16, 17, were in this hotel together. Daisy is taking a bath. There was this huge, big soaker tub. Daisy's taking a bath. Romeo left the room for a minute. She's like, I can't remember exactly what he was doing. I don't know if he was going down to, like, get more champagne or get ice or something, but he was not in the room. And I didn't hear because I had my head under the water. I had, like, my ears under the water, and I had my eyes closed in the bath because I thought, you know, I'm alone in my hotel room. Nothing to worry about. And all of a sudden, this man is choking her. It wound up, like, crushing her larynx, and she is, like, wet in a bath, like, unclothed, wet. Like, she's trying to fight him, but, like, she's at, like, such a disadvantage. Like, position-wise, he's above her. She's also, like, soaking wet and, like, slippery. She, like, can't grab a hold of him. And she says to Christian, she remembers thinking to herself, I hope they kill me before Romeo gets back. Because, like, very clearly, like, it was supposed to be a message for Julian. Like, they were really only there for her. And she hoped that they would kill her and then leave, and that Romeo wouldn't get hurt, like, in the crossfire, essentially. But Romeo does get back in the room and he sees the man choking Daisy, and he takes a mirror and he cracks it over the guy's head. But there's a second man in the room, and he has a gun, and he's holding Romeo, and the other guy gets Daisy out from the bath and he starts touching her, and Romeo tries to like lunge for her, tries to like to stop this man from assaulting her a little bit. The guy with the gun changes the gun and points it at Daisy, and then this is what happened. Daisy says, "It's okay," I mouthed over to him wordlessly. "I love you." "I'm so sorry," Romeo mouthed back as Dark Eyes sat down on the edge of the bathtub. This is how she distinguishes the two men. Dark Eyes is one of them, and the other one is Thick Neck. Those are our two guys. And casually pointed at my boyfriend, who was watching as his friend groped me. Rome was crying. He was maybe just 19 at the time. 18? 19 at the very oldest. And he was so sad, so wrecked watching this person trying to do this terrible thing to me. But I knew he wouldn't risk doing anything that might get him shot. Not because he wouldn't die for me. He would in a second. But he was doing everything in his power not to die in front of me, too. And so, like, this, she, like, comes back to this moment a lot. This moment in which he's mouthing, like, "I'm sorry" to her as they, like, think they're gonna die. Like, they think they are going to die. They really don't see a way out of this. But then Daisy thinks to herself, like, "I'm not dying without a fight." And so she decides to, like, go limp. And so the guy holding her, like, is kind of thrown off balance, and she's able to use that to grab the gun from him. And it's enough of a distraction for Romeo to, like, charge at him, and Daisy then takes the broken mirror and she stabs the guy that was holding her in the leg, and then Romeo, the other guy has Romeo, and he's holding him down, and he's trying to drown him in the bath, and then Daisy shoots him in the head. So Daisy kills both the guys. Then she says to Christian, "So, like, that's why I gravitate to Romeo when bad things are happening, because, like, we know how to do this. Like, there's, like, a muscle memory in us taking care of each other in this way." And Christian and Daisy, like, both apologize to each other. Christian apologizes for kind of, like, overreacting in that situation, and Daisy's like, "I apologize for, like, clinging to Romeo in that way." Daisy says, "It's a lot. I know, like, this whole life for me, this whole situation that I'm in, like, it's a lot." And Christian says, "Yeah, but it's not too much," which is nice. After all that, we're going to have to go deal with Magnolia and the family dinner. This is one of those moments, doing the tandem read, one of the things that makes me, like, giggle. It's, like, it's a whatever thing. But the, like, level of stakes in this book versus the level of stakes in this book, like, drastically different. We're about to go to a family dinner with Mags and the crew. Magnolia, Harley, Marsley, Bridge are at a family dinner, and Magnolia has to go to the family dinner because Harley refuses to pay her credit card bill unless she shows up. So we go from the story about death and destruction, gunshots, to a family dinner over a credit card bill. They're sitting down, and Harley, like, asks about Tom and how things are going, and Magnolia's like, yeah. And then Bridget asks about Gucci with BJ because her and BJ have a weekly lunch, and he mentioned it, which is so cute. Bridget and BJ, even though Magnolia and him are not currently together, still go to lunch every week. Cute, precious, we love. And then they also have, like, a very open, honest conversation about, like, who Magnolia is sleeping with, has slept with, and Marsley is like, "Are you being safe? Also, what did you mean by BJ almost died that one time?" And then Magnolia explains the story of, like, how he overdosed. So, like, everyone knows the story of BJ's overdose pretty much at this point. Okay, then Tom's back in town. He was gone. Remember, that's when the whole Gucci thing happened. Tom was out of town. He is back in town, and immediately Magnolia tells him, like, "BJ and I kissed." And Tom is like, "Okay, so are we over? Like, what's the deal there?" And Magnolia's like, "I guess so." She's kind of, like, really bummed about it. She knows she's gonna, like, she knew this was coming. She was gonna have to tell Tom about this kiss. But, like, she really likes Tom. She would, like, rather continue hanging out with Tom. And Tom's like, "You really don't sound sure about this, like, about the fact that we're over." And then he's like, "Say what you're trying not to say. What are you trying to avoid saying?" And Magnolia's like, "I really do like you. Like, I really do like you. I, like, kind of want to see where this relationship would end up." And Tom is like, "I like you too. I'm tossing my hat in the ring." This is where we get the throuple. The throuple moments are some of my favorite chapters in in this book. I love when we have the Tom, BJ, Magnolia throuple. We're gonna get to see it at a couple events. Actually, maybe we only get to see the throuple in action once. But I honestly feel like this could be a really valid solution to this. It's not the solution we go with, Unfortunately, Magnolia's not just, like, in a reverse harem where she has, like, all the guys at her beck and call. I actually think BJ would probably hate that, so whatever. We have a club opening, and we've got BJ and Magnolia mostly that were carried out. They're going to, Joe's opening a new club. BJ goes to pick Magnolia up. Tom's not coming tonight, but Magnolia needs to tell BJ that Tom is still in the picture and that he has tossed his hat into the ring. And BJ obviously doesn't like the idea of Magnolia staying with Tom, obviously. But at the same time, he's like, I would do whatever this girl wanted. He thinks to himself, again, one of the best lines in the series, she could have lopped off my entire arm, and if she looked a bit sad about it, I'd offer my other one if it'd cheer her up. And then we get a little bit more thought. This is a lot of like internal thought process about BJ, kind of like grappling with the fact that like he thought he had Magnolia back, and now he's still having to fight for her a little bit more. The problem with me and Parks, I think, is we love each other more than ourselves. Again, that sounds romantic, but it's not. Because if she loved herself more than she loved me, she would have years ago. I don't deserve all the chances she half tries to give me. And if I loved myself more than I love her, I would have cut the ties between us as soon as she started to strangle me with them. If I loved me more, I would have let myself drift away into the dark, out of her light. But I didn't, and I couldn't, and I won't, because when it comes down to her, I have zero instinct for self-preservation. I'll die in her arms or at her doorstep trying to get back into them. I don't give a fuck. And then they like chat some more, and BJ is like, I just don't understand like where I'm like, why this isn't enough. Like, where am I losing you? Where is this disconnect happening? And Magnolia is like, it comes out that Magnolia still like doesn't trust BJ. She's like, the only thing that you could give me that would fix this is a time machine, like to go back and undo what you did. Like, I just don't know if I can trust you. And I know I can trust Tom. And like, that's the big decision. Like, she obviously loves BJ more, but she trusts Tom more. To the club, they make out the whole way in the car. BJ makes his driver take the long way to the club because he just wants to make out with Magnolia in the car. Like, truly, that boy would be happy on the moon. They like shot him off to the moon and it was just him and Magnolia there. Happiest day of his life. They get there and Perry, Parks, and Paley are talking in the corner. Like, BJ went off somewhere and then he comes back and he overhears the conversation that's happening between Perry, Parks, and Paley. All the P's. And Paley is suggesting that BJ is lying about cheating on Magnolia with Tara. Yeah, Paley's like, maybe he's lying about that. Like, how do you know for sure he's telling the truth? Because Tara's there tonight. Magnolia's like, yeah, it's fine that Tara's here because, like, BJ told me he didn't cheat on me with Tara. BJ comes over and is like, I'm literally gonna kill you, Paley. Stop. And they, like, get into this big fight, and Perry is standing up for Paley, and BJ is, like, trying to fight them, and then Joe comes over, and Joe is like, yeah, that's not cool. And Joe and BJ leave the party without Paley and Perry. So Joe and Tara and BJ and Magnolia leave the party, which is Jonah's club opening, and they leave without Perry and Paley because those two are causing drama. We don't like them. And they get stopped by the paparazzi. There's like swarms of paparazzi outside asking questions mostly about Tom, and Magnolia is still holding BJ's hand. And everyone is very well aware that this is going to cause problems for Magnolia and for Tom if she's seen out like with BJ in this capacity. There's going to be like too many questions. And so Tara decides to distract the paparazzi by kissing Magnolia on the mouth. Because like those will then be the images that are sold, and so there'll be less questions because I don't know. But we love the energy Tara. Again, they're trying to make me like Tara. And I don't dislike her. I mean, I did, but like, I'm cool with her. Okay, we get the throuple moment. The thing that we've all been waiting for. The throuple moment between Magnolia, Tom, BJ. And we also get Bridge and Bushka in this scene. What more could I ask? Literally everyone in the same spot. Bushka and Bridge are my favorite characters to be included. And I love them. We are at Holland Park right now, but they're going to a big gala ball situation together. And Magnolia is going to this ball with both Tom and BJ. And she is trying to convince Bridget to come with her too. And Bushka is also trying to get an invite as they're like getting ready. And then Magnolia is like, fine, Bushka, you can come. And Bridget finds out that she's going with Tom and Magnolia, or Tom and BJ. And she's like, well, I want to come too. I want to kind of see what's happening. So now everyone is going to the ball together. And they're getting ready, and Tom arrives first, and he's like, Magnolia, you look absolutely stunning. And then a few minutes later, BJ walks in, and he's like, Tom, mind taking your hands off the girl of my dreams for just a second? And then he comes over and, like, kisses Magnolia. She's in her, like, full throupleness. And then Bushka comes from the top of the stairs. And BJ is so excited. BJ loves Bushka. And he says, my favorite of the Parks women. And Magnolia's like, she's not even a Parks. Like, she's not a Parks. My dad is the Parks, so, like, my mom's mom is not a Parks. And Bushka and BJ walk out together. Like, he walks out on Bushka's arm. And then Tom and Bridget are, like, chatting with each other. And Bridget and Tom walk out together. And so Magnolia's left by herself. She, like, has to walk out by herself. And she's like, I guess I'll just lock up then. Like, she's supposed to be going with 2 boys to this ball. And now she ends up with 0. And they get to the ball, and BJ can tell that Magnolia is really nervous. Like, she's really nervous. And she is already, like, in her head, essentially, like, reading what the tabloids are going to say about her. She knows that they're going to, like, rip her to shreds for having these, like, 2 boys going at the same time. And so BJ walks with Bushka One, to take some pressure off of Magnolia, but also because he like loves Bushka. Like they really are BFFs. And then Magnolia winds up doing like, she's going and doing like her rounds. She's networking. And BJ and Tom wind up like in the corner. And BJ's like, wow, she's like really struggling tonight. Like I can tell. And he's like chatting with Tom, and you know that Tom like really pities him. That there's this sense of Tom recognizing what is between Magnolia and BJ and knowing that like BJ like just can't make it work. And they talk about how Magnolia is just magnetic and how like everyone wants to be around her, and it's just like this magical thing that just like pulls people towards her. And Tom is like, I'm almost intimidated by your bond and like the history you guys share. And they chat some more, and Tom admits that he is falling in love with Magnolia. Like he's like, I'm really falling for her. And then Tom says to BJ, okay, well, may the best man win. And BJ says, nah, bro. F the pilot. I'm pulling for the obvious worst man. He's really effed up, but has a heart of gold. I love that line where he's like, no, fuck the pilot. He says, no, I don't care about you. I do not want the best man to win because you are probably the best man. I want me to win. I'm going to get my girl at the end of the day. During the Throuple vibes, BJ goes on a little vacation. We're actually getting this from Christian's perspective. They go on a little surf trip down to Nique. I don't know where that is. I'll put it on a map. Christian is still like reeling from the story about the hotel from Daisy. Like that's still like top of his mind. He's still thinking of that every day, and like how traumatic that must have been for her, and like how like she truly like her life is at risk in this way that he didn't really comprehend before like her sharing the story. And this also was crazy to me because there's like a lot of parallels between Daisy and Magnolia. I've talked about it before. But another crazy parallel that I didn't pick up until I was doing like the notes for this video was that like Magnolia and Daisy, like one of their most traumatic events for both of them is like deeply connected to bathtubs. Like they both have deep bathtub trauma. Like Daisy's got this hotel story. Magnolia won't take baths anymore because the cheating happened in a bathtub. BJ and the girl he hooked up in a bathtub. Both have a lot of bathtub trauma. I don't think either of them take baths. They shower, okay? Don't be gross. They smell nice, I'm sure. I'm sure Magnolia smells so delight. I'm sure Daisy does too. I'm sure everyone in this book smells so good. You just know they do. Anyway, they both have bathtub trauma. That's not why we're here. Their boys are on a surf trip. Christian is like annoyed that Magnolia is dating both Tom and BJ at the same time, which, why? This is literally none of your business. But he does find he's thinking less about Magnolia these days. Good. Finally. I need you to get over my little sweet friend. And the boys just kind of like spend the trip teasing Christian about like how much time he always spends at Daisy's house. And like, you know, clearly he's like kind of wrapped around Daisy's finger a little bit. It's kind of a cute moment, okay? A cute little surf trip. The boys have a nice time. We're so glad they had a nice friendship moment. Back in London, Julian is at a speakeasy with the boys. So he's out there with Carmelo, Kikoa, Joe, and Declan. And he's out for like the first time since that shooting at the club. And Christian, he like feels pretty comfortable with the fact that Christian is like looking after Daisy like fairly well. Like he's doing like a fairly good job. But Julian's also worried that he's inviting danger, that like, again, having her tangled up with another person from a crime family is just going to invite more danger towards her. And he's thinking about the shooting and how clearly that shooting was like a message for him. How the fact that it was a near miss was like a message that like they can get to him if they want, if they can get to his sister if they want to. And then he kind of like checks in with Carmelo about Romeo, and it turns out Romeo is not doing well. He is sleeping with Tabby again, and he's just like really messed up after everything that happened with Daisy and how they like almost got back together again. He's still so like madly in love with Daisy that he's like really not doing so hot. And Jonah is apparently like Team Romeo. Which is crazy to me. That's kind of rude to your brother, Jonah. Okay, like I'm also Team Romeo over Team Christian, but like I'm not related to Christian. I would be so mad if my brother was Team the other guy. What the heck? That would be like if I'm thinking of Twilight. Obviously the most popular love triangle is Twilight. And it would be like if Jasper was Team Jacob. I could see it happening actually. Jonah's like, I think Christian might still F it up. So like don't count it as a total loss. Yeah, they like still might end up back together. And then Declan comes in and is like, hey, Julian, you know Ezra Brown, that guy we stole that painting for? And Julian's like, yeah. And he's like, he still hasn't paid his other half. And Julian's like, and he already has the painting? And Declan's like, yeah, he said the money was in escrow when we gave the painting to him, so he owes us $70 million. And Julian is like, guys, we can't just be giving people paintings without them paying. And Declan's like, it's your job to make sure that the painting is paid for. And Julian says, you work for me. Your job is whatever I tell you to do. So, like, you should have done that. Anyway, it's really bad news. We're going to have to deal with that. That is a real problem that we're going to have to deal with. The next chapters, plural, are all about Julian's birthday. Julian's turning 30. Congratulations, King. And we start with a Daisy chapter about Julian's birthday. And Daisy goes into Julian's room first thing in the morning, and there's no one in his room. She's like, thank goodness, I'm glad there's not a girl in his bed. But every birthday morning, she makes him breakfast in bed. And she makes him the same thing every year because it was the only thing she knew how to make when she was like 8 or 9, this first year she started this tradition. And it's like corned beef hash. She makes him corned beef hash every birthday morning. It's very sweet. And so she brings in that and she serves it to him, and she's been, apparently it's like she gets better at it every year she improves her skills, and she's been like working on it since like very, very early, like 3 o'clock in the morning. She's like working on these freaking potatoes. And the plan for the day is that they're gonna go car shopping and then watch a Batman movie, and then they're going to dinner at the Brambillos, and the big party is tomorrow night. And it's just like sweet. They just have like a sweet birthday moment together. We love it. And then that night they go to dinner at the Brambillos for the birthday, and obviously Christian comes. He comes with Daisy, and then Romeo has brought Tabby as well. Why, Romeo? But he has. You know what? Actually, Romeo has done nothing wrong in this book, really. Has he done anything wrong? I don't think he's done anything majorly wrong yet. So you know what? Let him bring a girlfriend. Daisy is occupied, so bring a girlfriend, Rome. And it's like a weird vibe for Christian because like Romeo is bringing up so much history and like tells so many stories about like Daisy and him growing up, and so there's like kind of that happening where Christian like doesn't know these stories and isn't involved because like the Brambillos have known Daisy and Julian for like years and years and years, and there is like a lot of history, but then also Tabby is there, so the tension is weird, and like Romeo's kind of like still flirty with Daisy, and Christian's trying to like not be like too possessive because like he's not trying to make this birthday dinner about him. And Daisy spent the afternoon like cooking this dinner for Julian. I like don't know, there's not enough hours in the day, but Daisy like cooked this dinner and then winds up spending like the whole dinner acting as this like buffer between like Romeo and Christian, and it's just kind of like weird vibes. The birthday party. So birthday day, that was the day. The next day, it's time for the birthday party. And the first person we're going to get the birthday party from, who we get it from a couple POVs, is from Miss Magnolia. Magnolia is going with BJ. BJ thinks he's bringing Magnolia like as his +1 to this birthday party, but Magnolia got her own invitation because don't you forget, like Magnolia and Julian had like a little thing. A little thing. It's so fun and so cute. And they arrive and they immediately spot Christian and Daisy, and then they spot Julian and Jonah. And they go to go say hi to Julian since they've arrived, and Julian immediately greets Magnolia, and everyone is confused with how like cordial and familiar they are with each other. And Magnolia recounts the instructions that Joe and BJ gave her about Jules. And then like the rules that she was given around Julian were always like, avoid him at all costs unless someone is trying to kill you. Then run straight to him. Okay? And she's like, someone wasn't trying to kill me, but I was dying when I ran into his arms. So apparently we get the story of like what happened that like one night between Magnolia and Julian. It was like a few weeks post breakup with BJ. It was her first night out. Paley was like, I don't think we should go out. I think we maybe should stay home. But Magnolia was like, I need to get out there. I need to go like out on the town. She's like, the thing was, I was never going to stop grieving BJ. Like there was never going to be a moment where I just like got over this. And so I just needed to learn how to live my life within the grief. Like that's what needed to happen. And so she goes to a club, but then Paley has this like boy that she's had a crush on for a long time, and she starts making out with him in the corner. She's like really going at it, and Magnolia is like kind of left alone, and she's like, but I can't be too mad. Like Paley had spent the past few weeks just like crying with Magnolia and sitting with her in her room and like just like truly being with her, so she couldn't be too mad at Paley. But Magnolia is just kind of like chilling. Julian walks up to her and he starts flirting with her, and he buys her a drink, and they like talk about BJ, and it comes out that like her and BJ have broken it up, and Julian's like, can I take you home? And MP is like, for sure. Magnolia is like, yes, you can take me home. And they make out in the car, and they get back to his place, and Magnolia is like, Julian is like a very good kisser, which I believe. And they get back to his office, and Magnolia starts to like panic. She starts to panic a little bit, and she's trying to play it off, but Julian can see that she's like not well, and she is she's like kind of starting to ramble, as Magnolia does when she gets really nervous, and she's like, oh my gosh, we're gonna sleep together, it's gonna be like totally awesome, it's gonna be a great time, we're gonna have so much fun, yay. And then Julian pauses, he like pulls back, and he just like stands and is like, hey, you know I have a sister. And Magnolia's like, what a weird time to bring that up. We are literally about to sleep together. So, like, I don't know why you're bringing that up. And Julian is like, I know girls. Are you sure you want to do this? Like, this seems like not what you want to be doing in this moment. And Magnolia immediately starts crying. Just, like, this momentary pause is enough to make her, like, totally start bawling. And this is her, like, recounting of the events. He laughed and pulled away, shaking his head. Magnolia. He pulled me into his lap and held me into his chest, and then he just let me cry. That's probably not on-brand behavior for a gang lord. Maybe that's why he never told Jonah. Ours is hardly a story regaling his sexual prowess. I just cried on him for about 2 hours. Big, shoulder-heaving, snotty sobs. His bodyguard made me pancakes, and then I cried more. He played with my hair. I spent the night in his bed. I told him everything that happened. He offered to kill BJ, and I was afraid he meant it. We talked all night until I fell asleep on him, and then that was it. He drove me home the next morning, gave me his number, and said if I ever needed anything. It's just, like, such a sweet moment, and I love the fact that he, like, pauses, like, mid kind of, like, make out, and he's like, I have a sister. Like, you just, like, know he's, like, thinking of Daisy and, like, thinking about, like, what he would want someone to do for Daisy in that moment if, like, Daisy was going through that. And I find it so sweet, okay? Jules, gold star. And anyway, back in the present day, BJ is like, I didn't realize you guys knew each other. And Julian's like, everyone knows this one. This one, everyone knows her. And Magnolia realizes that if BJ doesn't know, that means Jonah never knew. Because Jonah would have told BJ. Which means Julian didn't tell Jonah. And Julian and Jonah are, like, very close friends. And she's like, interesting. And then she says, would you believe me if I said we were in a book club together? And then Julian says, I offered to help her out with something. She never took me up on that offer. And BJ's like, what the hell, Magnolia? And Magnolia's like, we kissed one time. We almost slept together, actually. And BJ's like, when? When did this happen? And Magnolia's like right after we broke up. And BJ's like, he's a very dangerous man, Magnolia. I don't think you understand how dangerous this man is. And Magnolia's like, you understand, like, we are currently at his birthday party. Like, if he's so dangerous, why are we at his birthday party? Anyway, they move on. It's like holding her, they're dancing, they're having, like, a nice night together. All of a sudden, there is yelling from across the club. Someone is screaming at each other. Daisy and Christian are fighting. And Daisy shouts, I'm the girl you're sleeping with while you're thinking about your best friend's girlfriend. And Magnolia is like, is this play about us? Like, clearly, she's like, are they talking about me right now? They are. And she thinks to herself, oops, I maybe have made too many boys fall in love with me over the course of my life. Like, maybe I do have a problem. This is, like, the first time she was recognizing it because, like, Christian, she's always kind of strung along Christian, and she's, like, known it in the back of her head, but she's kind of ignored that fact for herself. Then Christian, Joe, Magnolia, and BJ wind up in a back alleyway. Christian is, like, punching a wall. He's, like, so upset about this whole, like, kerfuffle that happened with Daisy, and Jonah is like, Christian, tell me that Daisy is wrong. Tell me that she is wrong and that you are not still in love with Magnolia. And BJ is crushed. He's mad that yet another man is in love with Magnolia. He's, like, found out about this thing with Julian where they, like, almost got together. And now there's this thing with Christian and how Christian is still in love with her. And Tom is still in love with her. And he's like, oh my gosh. He's just, like, overwhelmed. He's overwhelmed. And Magnolia's like, well, I didn't know for sure Christian was in love with me. But she's like, I also didn't put a stop to any of the feelings he might have had. Like, I knew he had something going on. And I never put a stop to it because, honestly, it worked out for the best for her. And Magnolia tries to apologize to Christian with her eyes, but Christian doesn't speak that language. Like, Magnolia and BJ could have eyeball conversations, but unfortunately Christian and Magnolia cannot. Then we get the same thing from Christian's perspective, and we learn that they arrive at the party. Jack's got a new boyfriend, and Daisy's kind of, like, hanging out with him initially. And Christian feels Daisy, like, stiffen up when Magnolia arrives, and he wonders if she knows. He's this momentary thought where he's like, does Daisy know I used to have a thing with Magnolia, and, like, maybe I'm still a little bit in love with her? And then we get that whole exchange. Christian is watching BJ during this whole exchange between Julian and Magnolia, and he just thinks about his friend. He can, like, see the hurt on BJ's face, and he knows that, like, BJ is just, like, torn up by this. And he's mad that Magnolia is flirting with Julian because she's, like, obsessed with attention, and it is never enough. And in his head, he calls her a man-eating train wreck, but, like, mostly his thoughts are about BJ. and how just sad he is for his friend. And we like love the growth. We love that he's kind of shifted and been like, wow, externally from this position, I can see that this is like a really messy situation for one of my dearest and closest friends. But while this is all happening, he can tell that Daisy is becoming more and more annoyed, and she like goes to the bar by herself, and Christian like kind of doesn't know what her deal is, but then he looks up and over at the bar, and Romeo has an arm around Daisy's waist, and he's like, whoa, 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 what's happening? And he comes over and he's like, what's going on, Daisy? And Daisy's like, we're done. And Christian's like, why? Like, I thought we were all good. And Daisy says, I'm not the girl you're sleeping with while you're thinking about your best friend's girlfriend. Like, she's like, obviously I've noticed you spent the entire night staring at Magnolia Parks. And I know when I take Romeo home tonight, he won't be thinking about her. And then Daisy's like, Rome, take me home. And that rhymes. And they leave, and then we get the Christian's freaking out, and he's like, I think I've lost her. Like, and BJ is mad because he didn't know that Christian was still in love with Magnolia, and he's chatting with Henry because he's so upset over the Daisy thing. It's really messy. Okay, one more perspective. From Daisy's perspective, she knew Christian. She noticed it the moment Magnolia walked in the room because Christian went weird. He like scoffed. He like let out this like little like exhale that Daisy was like, that was for Magnolia. And she says in her thought, she said that little puff of air blew over their house of cards. It's like house of cards of the relationship they built. She's like, it's always going to be about her for him. And she's like, I needed to save myself. Like, I knew that this was going to wreck me, and I needed to do my best to save myself. And she's already heartbroken when she goes to find Rome. And so she has Rome take her home. She's at home, and she is just like heartbroken. There are reminders of Christian everywhere. He's been in her house like for the past like month all the time. Like, he has empty glass of water on the nightstand. He has like sweatshirt is in the corner. Like, there's just these little reminders of Christian everywhere. And she wants to sleep with Rome and just like numb it. Like, that's her plan. She's like, I need to sleep with Rome and numb the pain. And Romeo's like, I don't think this is a good idea. You are like heartbroken right now. You just broke up with your boyfriend literally 10 minutes ago. Like, I think you should like calm down. Daisy's like, no, make me feel better. And they sleep together, and Daisy is just like completely shattered and heartbroken and really just using Romeo as this like band-aid to keep her together in the aftermath of losing Christian. Okay, that was the end of Julian's birthday party. This is the aftermath. The next morning, Julian wakes up. He actually had a great time at his birthday party. He did not know any of the shenanigans went down. The boys did a great job of shielding him of that, and that's what true friends do. On your birthday, you should know about the shenanigans that are happening with your sister in the corner. Your birthday should be about you vibing, and Julian got to vibe on his birthday. The next morning, he walks downstairs, and there's a shirtless Romeo in his kitchen, and he says, hey, what are you doing? And he learns that Daisy and Christian broke up, and now Daisy and Romeo are back together. And he says, okay, that seems troubling, but we can't deal with that right now. And they also are going to go deal with Ezra today. They go to Ezra Brown's house to see if they can collect the other half of their payment. And when they knock on the door, who opens Ezra Brown's door but his daughter, who is probably like 8 or 9 years old. And Julian is annoyed at this because, like, okay, you like owe a crime family money and you're letting your kids answer the door. Like, come on, be a little bit more respectful. He would like never hurt a kid, but like, he's the exception, not the rule in the crime world, you know? And so he's just like kind of annoyed with Ezra at the irresponsibility of letting his child answer the door. But then Ezra comes to the door and is like, I'm not paying you for the rest of this. You actually stole another painting while you were stealing my painting. That painting is worth $75 million. I owe you $70 million. So I feel like we're even Stevens. And Julian's like, I'm going to kill your wife. And Ezra seems to be like unfazed by this, like unbothered by this. And Julian's like, okay, that's seeming to not affect you. So let me tell you this. I would literally kill you right now on your doorstep. Just dead. You'd be dead before you could even realize what was happening, except your kids are home. So I'm not going to do that because I don't want to traumatize them. But do know that I will be seeing you again. Okay? Kisses. And then he leaves. So the Ezra Brown situation has now escalated, and Julian needs to collect his money because not only is he owed $70 million and he needs that to like pay people, but also you can't be seen as someone who's not going to collect payments that you are owed as like a crime boss. That's not good for business. Christian, in the immediate aftermath of Julian's birthday and the breakup, Christian initially goes to his grandfather's house. He goes to his grandpa's house, he goes fishing, they talk about everything, and his grandpa is like, you need to go talk to BJ. Like, you have been friends with him for 20 years. Like, you need to have a conversation with him. And then you need to go talk to this girl you're in love with and tell her about your feelings. Like, and Christian's like, I can't do that. And he's like, you are being too proud. Like, your pride is getting in the way of your happiness right now. Like, you need to go talk to these people. And we love Grandpa Jimenez. What a star. Honestly, we need to send BJ to Camp Hemes with Grandpa Hemes and like have him talk some sense into this boy. A lot of ails could be cured if we sent all the characters to go see Grandpa Hemes. Meanwhile, the day after the birthday dinner, BJ is, say it with me, he's spiraling. BJ thinks Magnolia is lying about not sleeping with Christian. And he is just like really spiraling over the fact that Christian is still in love with Magnolia. And this was a relationship that really hurt him when he saw it happening, but he thought it was like so temporary. And to see that it's like still something that is active in some capacity, any capacity, is just troubling to him. And so he drops Magnolia back at home after the club and then immediately starts doing a lot of coke. He immediately starts doing just like so much coke. He's ignoring Magnolia's calls. He's barely responding to her text messages, only enough so like she doesn't like freak out, but like he's never texting her like himself. And a few days later, Christian comes to him as he's like in his spiral. And Christian's like, here's the thing, BJ, I am in love with her. And BJ's like, the thing also is, you are not the first person to tell me that lately. It seems like I've been noticing a trend in which men are coming to me being like, they're in love with my girl. Don't love that. And Christian's like, that's kind of messed up that she has all these people in love with her. And BJ gets defensive of Magnolia immediately because if anyone's coming for Magnolia, that's not BJ. BJ's going to step in and be like, hey. But Christian's like, no, like BJ, think about it. She needs everyone to be in love with her. And BJ's like, why did you even get with her? Like, why did you start this to begin with? Like, she was your best friend's girl. Like, why would you do that? That was like not a cool move. And Christian says, or thinks, let's see. And Christian says, she was sad and I wanted to make it better. He shrugs like he can't help it. Maybe he can't. I can't. But she was sad because of you. Because for her, it's always you. And that's not true anymore, BJ says. Yes, it is, man. How can't you see that? Everything she does is because of you or about you or trying to because you up first. I cover my face with my hands, feeling weird and exposed. Peek through my fingers at my old friend. Why didn't you tell me? Because she's yours. He glares over at me a bit. And even when she isn't, she is. He glances up at me. And I don't want her. I don't know how to get past her. And then he says to BJ, he's like, I really need to go talk to Magnolia. Like, I wanted you to know, but like, I need to talk to her and like find some closure to this situation. And BJ is like, I trust you. Like, I trust you to do that. Like, he's a little nervous about it, but like, he does in the end, like, trust Christian to go have that conversation. And we like love the communication, like great communication. It's a little late, a little bit, like we really wish we could have had this combo, you know, a minute ago, but like we will take it. Please transfer these conversational skills, these communication skills to the conversations you have with your girlfriends. Both of you suck at them. So if you could please like gather yourselves and like do a better job talking to them, that would be gorgeous and beautiful and awesome. In the aftermath of Julian's party, we get a cute little combo between Magnolia and Bridget as well. Magnolia and Bridget are out for brunch, and Magnolia has been seeing Tom a lot since that day because BJ hasn't wanted to spend any time with her. BJ has been kind of avoiding her, and so she's been spending most of her time with Tom. And Bridget is like, I think you might be addicted to male attention. Like, Magnolia has told Bridget like the story of what happened at the club with Christian, and Bridget in response is like, Magnolia, I think you might be addicted to male attention. Like, maybe something happened when you were a kid and Harley never gave you the attention you needed, but then you were okay for a while because BJ made you the center of his universe and it worked. It filled that gap for you until it didn't, until he cheated and he was gone, and now like you were left with this like void, this like ripped open void, and you need everyone to be in love with you. We love the prognosis bridge because honestly, of course that's true. That's what's happening. And Daisy, we gotta check in on literally everyone. Daisy, in the aftermath of the breakup, is reeling. She is in bed with Romeo still, and she recounts kind of her last moments where she was like truly a couple with Romeo before her brother broke her up. Julian and Carmelo gave Romeo and Daisy like one day to like recover before they like had a conversation with them. One day where they like were in bed together, Daisy like couldn't speak. Remember, her larynx was crushed and she like could barely talk. In the aftermath of this, like she's pretty like torn up. They're both like you know, reeling. This is like a very traumatic incident. And then they come in and let them know that they're going to send Romeo to New York to finish his schooling. Like they're done with having him here. They needed to be separated. And immediately Romeo turns to Daisy and she says, like, run away. He's like, run away with me. Like, come with me come with me anywhere else. Like, we can leave together. And Daisy's like, I can't. And Romeo's like, I'll take care of you. I'll take care of you. Because Romeo knows that it's not London that Daisy's attached to, but like her brother. And so he's like, I will take care of you in the same way your brother does. Like, I will make sure that you are safe. And Daisy knows that's true. Daisy knows Ron would take care of her, but she thinks to herself, Romeo meant the world to me, but Julian meant the universe. Like, she's like, I cannot leave my brother. They're like so attached to each other. And so Romeo goes to New York by himself, and almost immediately Daisy sees all these headlines of Romeo just like sleeping his way through like the New York socialite scene. And it's like really painful for her, because although they weren't together anymore, there is something she thought they were still a couple in some way, and they aren't. But when Romeo comes home for like Christmases and stuff, they always hook up. They're still like they become like non-exclusive, but they still are like very much together in this way until the Tabby Jukes incident. Anyway, back in the present day, they're in bed, and they have been essentially since they left the party. And Romeo like leaves. He's like, I gotta talk to my mom on the phone, honestly, because she hasn't seen me in days, and she's gonna start to get worried about me. And so she's on the phone, and then someone knocks on the door, and it's Tiller. Hey, Tiller. He's like, hi, I'm coming to do my weekly crime check. Anyone do any crime lately? No, not really. He actually came over to check in on Daisy because he's heard about the Christian breakup, and he just wants to see if she's okay. And also if she wants to hang out with him. I'm just kidding. He doesn't ask her on a date yet, but like also you can kind of tell that's sort of a little bit the vibe. It's a few weeks post Julian's birthday, and we are finally getting that conversation between Magnolia and Christian. So he got it cleared with BJ. Magnolia's in her room, and Christian walks in, and Magnolia immediately is like, oh my gosh, did they hurt you? She asked him, because the last time she saw him at the club, he was with the boys, and BJ was really mad, and they kind of like got pulled apart. And recall, we did have an incident once with BJ and Christian in which Christian got the crap beat out of him because he was with Magnolia. And so Magnolia's just like, oh my gosh, are you okay? And Christian says in response, fuck you, Magnolia. You're a bitch. I'm in love with you. He says all of these like pretty rapid succession, and then kisses her without asking. It's like very rude. And then he like finishes kissing her, and he says, I hate you. Magnolia, reeling from this, as one would be. You were just vibing in your bedroom, someone comes in, starts yelling at you, tells you they love you, and they kiss you, and then they say they hate you. You might be a little rattled. Magnolia is like, whoa, why? And Christian says, because you used me. Do you need the whole world to be in love with you? Magnolia immediately starts getting teary. She's probably also thinking about that conversation she just had with Bridget at brunch, where Bridget was like, hey, I think you need the whole world to be in love with you. Christian is also noticing a trend there. Christian says, I am over this now. Please let me be over you. And Magnolia is like, are you not going to be my friend anymore? She thinks to herself, like, he has always been like my safety net. Like, when BJ, because BJ will let me fall, like Christian has always been there for me. And so to like lose him feels like a pretty like substantial blow. And Christian says, no, I will like always be your friend. I'm not trying to end our friendship, but like I haven't been your friend in a long time. I've been this thing that you've like, this man that you've like strung along. From now on, like if you wouldn't ask Jonah to do something, like if you wouldn't ask one of your other friends to do something, don't ask me. And Magnolia's like, I'm sorry. Like, she's kind of coming to terms with the fact that, like, she hasn't been treating him like a friend for, like, a while now. And Christian says, you know, like, I let you. Loving you was a good reason to not let me love anyone else. Like, yes, you did string me along, but, like, I let you string me along. And then Magnolia says to him, do you love her? Talking about Daisy. And Christian goes, yeah. And Magnolia goes, lucky girl. And Christian says, hey, none of that. And she's like, I would say that to Jonah. Like, I would say that to Jonah too. And there's just this like moment of like closure, and like Christian feels relieved. Like he expected to be really sad, but like honestly the only thing he's feeling right now is like relief to be done with this, to not be tangled up with her anymore. And Magnolia thinks to herself, there's a finality to it. Like we're closing the chapter finally on what we used to be. How many loves, I wonder again. Some loves like ours are a wrecking ball in glass houses, and wrecking balls have no business being in glass houses. Like I had no business loving Christian how I did once upon a time. Except that sometimes some loves keep your head above the water when you're drowning. Some loves might fog up a phone booth on a rainy London afternoon and make you feel less alone than when you did before your lips touched. He's leaving what we had behind, like he should. Like I should have let him long ago. But I'll miss him on my rainy days. He stands and walks towards the door, pausing as he looks back. Don't fuck it up, Parks. I'll be pissed if you do. Meanwhile, while all this is happening, Daisy is still sleeping with Romeo. Like, in a concerning way. Like, they do not stop. It's been 2 weeks since Julian's birthday, and Rome and Daisy are still in bed together. And Jack comes in the room while Daisy and Rome are at it in bed together, not wearing clothes, and is like, that is enough. And Romeo, like, gets up and he, like, leaves to shower, and Jack is, like, opening the curtains, opening the windows, getting some air in this room. And Jack is like, I have texted, I've called, and you have ignored me. Where have you been? And Daisy's like, I've been here. Jack's like, in bed this whole time? And Daisy's like, yeah. And Jack is like, what happened with Christian? Like, what happened at that party? And Daisy's like, he's still in love with her. He's still in love with her. And Jack's like, okay, well, I do think we also need to be careful with Rome. Like, be careful. Right now, like, he is still very much in love with you. So you using him like this is, like, a little bit cruel. Just something to think about. Meanwhile, Julian is still trying to figure out what to do about the Ezra Brown problem. And they're trying to figure out, like, he's having, like, a meeting with the boys and trying to figure out, like, how he's going to get this man to pay. Because, again, he doesn't like his wife, so he can't use his wife as a bargaining chip. He can't use his mistress, his girlfriend, as a bargaining chip because she's the daughter of Stavros, the, like, Greek crime boss. So that was a no-go. And he's got kids, but, like, Julian makes it clear they, like, don't mess with kids. Like, they do not touch kids. Kids, it's one of the rules. And then TK is like, well, we're not going to hurt the kids. What if we just, like, kidnap him for a little bit, for, like, a little quick moment, and then we, like, put him right back where we found him? Would that be okay? And they, like, have this conversation about how, like, important it is that Julian gets paid because his reputation is, like, more important than the money. Like, his reputation is vital for them, like, continuing the work that they do. If people don't believe that he will follow through, that he is not a threat, then, like, it's over. And, like, things will crumble very, very quickly. Like, he cannot be seen as soft. And Julian says, okay, no one hurts the kids. And Kiko is like, never, we would never hurt kids. And Jules is like, okay, we take them. Oh my gosh. This is a bad moment. A dark moment for my beloved Julian. So that's the new plan. That's how they're going to get to Ezra Brown, is through his children. So BJ and Magnolia time. We get this moment from BJ and Magnolia. They haven't really spoken in a few weeks because since Julian's birthday, BJ has been busy, like, reeling from the realization that Christian is in love with her. It's drama. They, like, bump into each other at a park. They're, like, at St. Dunstan's in the East. It's their spot for both of them. Like, it's, like, a spot that both of them go often to, like, think about things. But BJ went with no, like, intention of seeing Magnolia. But he bumps into her there. And he starts talking with her. And he's like, hey, did Christian come and talk with you? Like, he talked with me and said that he was going to come speak with you. And Magnolia is like, yeah. And BJ's like, oh, how did it go? Like, what did he say? And Magnolia's like, I'm not going to tell you. And BJ's like, why won't you tell me? And she's like, I'll tell you if you tell me why you did it. Again, she's back on, like, why did you cheat on me? And BJ's like, I told you. And Magnolia's like, I can't believe that's the answer. I, like, don't believe that's the answer. And BJ's like, it's not my fault you don't believe me. Like, I told you the truth. I, like, don't know what more you want from me. And Magnolia's like, okay, fine. Then tell me who you slept with. And BJ's like, I will not tell you that. I'm not going to tell you that. And Magnolia's like, why won't you tell me that? And BJ's like, it will make it worse. And Magnolia is like, it couldn't be worse than the not knowing. Like, me, like, just going through every single face and being like, is that girl? Is it that girl? Is that girl? And BJ's like, it will. Knowing and having a face to put on the imaginings, it's worse. Like, trust me, as someone who knows that you have slept with Tom and can now, like, that just runs in my head as a loop, I know that is worse. And then they fight about it for a bit. They fight about Christian, and BJ's like, you strung him along, and Magnolia's like, I really never slept with him. Like, I, like, strung him along, but I didn't totally realize it. And BJ is like, it hurts me that you constantly are bringing all these guys around and you're sleeping with them and making them fall in love with you. And Magnolia is like, it hurts me when you sleep with everyone in London. And BJ is like, yeah, we've, like, both hurt each other. And until you admit that, like, what you have done has hurt me too, like, that I know I have hurt you, I will admit that and apologize for that. Until you can admit that, like, you have hurt me too, we will never be able to be together. And Magnolia is like, I guess we'll never work out then. And then they separate. And BJ was already spiraling, and now he's going to be spiraling worse. He said, oh my gosh, I was making some bad choices, but I think I can make them worse. And so he decides to throw a party, a big, giant Park Lane blowout bash. It's been a week since he saw Magnolia, and he hasn't heard from her since. And he's seen in the tabloids that she's been out and about with Tom. Like, they've just been spotted together, like, kissing and holding hands, and he is like, oh, I guess she did choose him. Like, I guess she made the choice. Like, we're not a throuple anymore. It's her and Tom. and we're over. And like there's like a little bit of finality now. Like things weren't great before that conversation, but that fight like really concluded things. And so again, he's decided, I'm gonna throw a big party and make the worst choices ever. He gets very, very, very high. Very, very, very high. And Christian is very, very sad over the Daisy thing. And Jonah and Henry are both like low-key in love with Tara, which is like a weird love triangle situation. And so like everyone is a little bit of a mess. No one is really closely babysitting BJ. Although Christian does take a drink away from him at one point. And BJ goes, you overdose one time. And it is like a funny moment. LOL. And then he winds up sleeping with Alexis Blau, this girl Magnolia didn't like from high school, who was like always trying to kind of like slide into BJ's DMs and was always like, just being like, not cool. And BJ is so like out of it and so like intoxicated that he doesn't notice that there is another person. There's like a second girl in his bed with Alexis and him until 5 minutes into like whatever is happening. He's like, oh, there's another girlie here. And it's a couple days after that party when there's another party. It's a party for Perry's birthday and Magnolia has to go. And Magnolia was trying to avoid it. Paley's like, no, you have to go. You guys are close friends. But like Magnolia's not ready to see BJ yet after that big fight they had. They haven't spoken at all since the fight, and it felt more final than she meant it to. That like moment in which she says, we're never getting back together, to quote the Taylor Swift song, like ever, did feel just like a little more final than Magnolia wanted it to. She like didn't mean it. She thinks to herself, it felt more final than I meant it to. That we're never gonna work. Of course we're gonna work. Even if I am a round peg and he's a square hole. I don't care. I'll shave down the edges of myself to keep him. I'll do anything for him. I can't remember the last time we didn't speak for this long. This has been more than a fortnight. That's felt like a year. Just a constant state of fretting. Like he kicked my world off kilter. An undeniable imbalance in the universe of myself. And imbalances are particular because they manifest in ways you don't expect. My heart's got a limp. It's had a limp for a while now, but it's found a crutch in Tom. Not just a crutch, but a goddamn hospital wing. If he were a surgeon, I'd be in trusty hands. But he's not, and I still am. So she like talks about how, once again, she's using Tom to like kind of like limp her way through dealing with BJ. But this feels more substantial than like Christian, where she like really did just use Christian as a crutch. There's something about Tom that feels healing. Like maybe if she stays with Tom long enough, like she will be able to not only like recover, like not only like get through things, but like maybe recover. And there's something a little bit scary about that as well. Coming to Perry's birthday party with her, like as foxhole duties. And Magnolia is like, hey, Tom, are we still fake dating? What's the, like, are we fake dating or real dating? And Tom's like, I don't care. I will be whatever you need me to be. He's like, I can see that you're, like, trying to untangle yourself from him, from this boy that you've spent half of your life loving, and you were still in the process of that. But when you are done, when you are finally untangled from him, I'm going to be the first one in line for your heart because I want to be with you. They get to the party, and immediately we spot Mr. BJ, and he is making out with Alexis Blau in the corner, and Magnolia's like, ew. Because once again, Magnolia never liked her. And everyone is like, oh my gosh, are you okay? Because like they're heavily making out in the corner. And normally this would be something very triggering for Magnolia. But she's like, I'm actually totally fine. I like don't care in the slightest. And Magnolia asks Henry, like not, he's being really sloppy in a way that is not typical of him. And it's only like 9 p.m. And Henry's like, because you're here with Tom England. Like obviously he's going to get a little drunk. And Magnolia's like, no. I just got here. Like this can't be my fault. And Joe is like, whatever, man-eater. Joe's in a bad mood today, I guess. I don't know. Sometimes Joe just, like, goes off. I guess he's protecting his friend. His best friend is BJ, and BJ has been having a hard time. So he's probably on Team BJ, okay? We'll believe that. And then Christian steps in and is like, don't talk to her like that. Sometimes you can talk to Magnolia mean. Like, it's okay. And then BJ stumbles over. He, like, sees this conversation happening. He stumbles over. Like, he is clearly, like, intoxicated. And Magnolia immediately looks at his face, and she can tell that something is off. And she goes, are you high? He's like, no. And Magnolia's like, are you? And BJ is like, don't be weird, Parks. Like, don't make this something it's not. And she looks around, and it's clear that the other boys know. Because they won't look at her. They're like looking down. They like won't make eye contact with Magnolia. And she shoves BJ and then she grabs his hair so she can like tilt his face up towards the light and look at his pupils. And she shouts at him, are you high? And BJ's like, get off of me. And then Magnolia just starts like smacking him. Is so overwhelmed with this betrayal that she like doesn't really know what to do with her body. And so she's just like hitting him. And BJ like shoves him away from her. And she stumbles. He's just like, he's not in his right mind. But she like stumbles back. And then Joe catches her. so she doesn't like fall far. He doesn't push her hard, but he's just like he's not himself. But Tom comes over, because obviously you can't shove someone's girlfriend. Tom comes over, punches BJ in the face, and BJ just lays there and takes it. And Tom is going in for another hit when a bouncer like grabs them and chucks them outside. And Magnolia shoves herself off of Joe, because Joe was just being mean to her like a second ago. And she goes over to Henry. So Henry is holding her now, and we're now in BJ's head, and BJ is absolutely wrecked. He's devastated. He hopes that Tom hits him a couple more times, because he's so upset with himself for shoving Magnolia. Like, that was absolutely unacceptable behavior, and he knows that. And he's like, having Tom punch me in the head at least like quiets that for a little bit. Like, it feels like maybe we're getting like a consequence to the choice I made, which was like a really, really, really bad one. Magnolia is like shouting from over where she's standing with Henry, and she goes, "I hate you." And BJ says, "I hate you too." And Magnolia says, "What is the matter with you?" And BJ says, "Stay away from me." And we know, because we're in BJ's head, that he means it as like, stay away from me, because he's scared of himself. He can't believe that he was so out of control and so not in the right state of mind that he would have like put his hands on her in any way that was not like kind and loving, to be honest. But Magnolia, he knows, is going to take it as this like stay away from me. I don't want to see you. I don't want to be with you anymore. And he's okay with that, because he just needs to keep her away from him in this moment, because he's frightened of himself. And Magnolia's like, "Why are you using again?" And BJ says, "Because you are killing me, Parks." And they are both like crying now. Both of them have tears streaming down their face. They're screaming at each other in this back alleyway. And BJ is like, "What do you want from me? Like, why are you like stringing me along this way? What do you want from me?" And Magnolia goes, "Nothing." And BJ goes, "Well, then why am I here? Like, if you don't want anything from me, why am I here? Just like, let me go." And Magnolia clarifies, "No, I don't care, BJ. I don't care that you don't do anything with your life. I don't care that you get too drunk on the weekends. I can even get past the fact that you are a raging slut." And then BJ says, "You love me. Everyone knows you love me. Your boyfriend knows you love me. Even you know you love me. Except you're sleeping with him. So who's the real slut in this situation?" And Tom goes, "Okay, that's enough." And BJ is like grateful that he's there. He is grateful that Tom is there to be the kind of guy that BJ cannot. Like, he knows in this moment, even though he's like devastated over losing her, that I think part of him would rather have Magnolia be with this man that is maybe someone who can like treat her better and be better to her, than have her be like destroyed with him. Ugh. And then Magnolia is not ready to leave. She's still talking to BJ, and she turns to him and says, "You promised me." And BJ says, "I promised you a lot of things." And Magnolia says, "I am done waiting for you to be who I thought you were." And BJ says, "You're done?" And Magnolia says, "Yes." And BJ says, "Finally." And then that is when Magnolia starts sobbing. Like, that finally just like broke her. Like, she was already crying, and now she's like completely sobbing. That finally was crushing to her. And she starts crying, shoulders bobbing like a buoy in rough seas. She's never cried like that in front of anyone but me before. And she's crying here on Harrington Road for all the world to see. And even though I'm about as I've been in years, high as a fucking satellite, I start to wonder, how many people in your lifetime do you get to love? How I love her. Can't be that many. How many loves do you get? Tell me it's 2. Please tell me it's 2. Joe pulls me backwards away from her, and I think the ties that bind us, I think I hear them snap. It's not 2. Joe drags me away. "Come on, man, that's enough." And I fight him, because it isn't. It won't ever be. There's no such thing as enough when it comes to her. No enough, and I will never be done. Anyway. I'm crying. Then Tom takes Magnolia away, and in the morning she wakes up and she doesn't entirely remember how she got in her bed. She like remembers BJ saying "finally," that word like echoing in her head, and Tom is in her bed next to her, and she's just like feeling so sad. Like, this is like wrecked her in this way. Like, this feels like I know I keep saying like these feel like solid breaks, but each one feels more solid. Like, they didn't realize how many ties there were binding them, and it just keeps severing more and more and more. And like, how many will be left before it's like unfixable? And she goes downstairs, and her whole family is waiting for her. Bridget and Ari and Marcelly and Harley are all at the table waiting for her, and they heard about the fight from the tabloids. Like, it was everywhere, because like they were fighting out in the street. And Magnolia is like, "It's true, like BJ and I are over, but I'm fine." And Ari says, "If you're fine, why did I schlep myself all the way over here?" And Marcelly says, some people, like, especially parents, would like consider the fact she's fine to be like a positive thing. Like, it's good that she's doing fine. And Ari's like, I mean, I'm like glad you're fine. And I know you and BJ will work it out. You always do. And Magnolia goes, not this time. And Magnolia leaves and Bridget follows her, and Bridget's like, what do you mean not this time? Like, we're not going to work it out this time. And Magnolia's like, he's using again and he pushed me. Like, these are two things that are like really pretty hard lines in the sand. And Bridget gives her a hug, which really weirds Magnolia out. But Bridget's like, you need some more serotonin. And then she crawls back into bed with Tom, and Tom's like, we can be for real now if you want, like real girlfriend, boyfriend if you want. We don't have to be fake anymore. And Magnolia says, you're the oxygen mask that falls from the ceiling in planes. Works for me. Like, Magnolia's like, I don't know if I'm ready for like real, but like, I do need you. So like, please don't leave me. Please don't leave me. And he's like, I won't. BJ, as you may have predicted in your little noggin, you're like, I wonder what's going to happen next. BJ spirals. He goes on an Amsterdam trip with the boys. The boys are all a mess, according to BJ. We're going to get this trip, like, briefly from BJ's perspective, and then we'll get it from Christian's. But he's like, everyone's a mess. Like, Christian's sad over Daisy. I'm sad over Magnolia. Tara is, like, in between Joe and Henry. Like, so she's causing tension there. So all four of us are, like, a mess. And they, like, party. And they, like, you know, BJ is skin high, sleeping with girls, and they want to plan another trip as they're like headed home. They're wanting to plan another trip for the first week in December, and BJ says, I can't, I'm busy. Christian's perspective, everyone was a little messy, but we had to take turns babysitting BJ, and BJ was just like too messed up to notice. And Christian didn't actually really spiral until he had this conversation with Jonah, in which Jonah was like, hey Christian, how are you doing about the Daisy Romeo situation? They're like back together for real now. And Christian is like, what do you mean they're back together for real now? Do you think they're sleeping together? And Joe's like, yeah, literally all they do apparently is like sleep together. They like, haven't left Daisy's bed in weeks. And Christian's like, I think I'm gonna throw up. And Jonah's like, what is your deal? And Christian's like, I'm in love with her. And then he obviously spirals and pulls up a full BJ, he calls it. So like both him and BJ are just like in the streets of Amsterdam being absolute menaces to the people. Meanwhile, Magnolia also needs a little trip, but she's not going to go to Amsterdam and get high. She's going to go to Zurich with Paley and Perry and Tom. Tom obviously flies them, and they have like a little girls plus Perry and Tom trip to Zurich. And Paley is very much like Team Tom. She's very supportive of Magnolia and Tom, and like thinks that they are great together. Tom and Magnolia are sleeping together. They are acting like they're like a real couple. And Magnolia is kind of grappling with this idea that like maybe BJ was this important moment in her life. Like he will always be like her first love, this like big important love, but like maybe he isn't meant to be her forever. Like maybe Tom is supposed to be this like redeeming love, this second love that like changes her and heals her and allows her to like grow into the future. Back in London. Everyone's back in London now. And we get this moment with Daisy. Daisy's like leaving her house for the first time. We're proud of her. Daisy, Romeo, and Julian are going out for dinner. They've pried her from her bed. They're going out to dinner, and she's still like really sad about Christian. She thinks to herself, I loved him in a way I didn't know how to love someone. She says she like feels like she has this huge gaping hole in her chest, and she's just like trying to numb it with Romeo. Like Romeo is like really just like a painkiller, just like, and she is just needing another hit. They walk into this restaurant. She sees Christian sitting across the restaurant and like rips her open again. Like the little bits that she was able to heal herself are immediately ripped open again. And Christian comes over and he's like, can we talk? And Daisy is like, no. And Christian's like, please, I just like want to talk to you. And Romeo's like, she said no, get out of here. And they start fighting on the floor until Daisy is screaming for her brother to stop things. And Julian is like annoyed. He's like, I just wanted to go out and have dinner. But he pulls them apart and he sends like Christian away. Julian is quite worried about Daisy. He has been watching all of this stuff that's happening with Romeo. Not great. He saw like how she behaved with Christian at dinner, like also not great. He's just like in general really worried. And a few days later he comes down and he finds Daisy like baking, but she's being really messy. She's like everywhere, like, which she's glad that she's baking. She has kind of like, she's lost all of her like all the things that make her herself. She's stopped going to class. She isn't doing laundry or cooking or boxing. And obviously like they can hire people. It's not that she's worried about the laundry getting done, but like she's not doing these things that she loves. So he's glad to see her in the kitchen again, but she's still not acting like herself because Daisy in the kitchen is like very precise, very neat, very tidy. She works on like one thing at a time. She's like very organized, and this is like a mess. She's trying to make like 12 things at once. There's like flour everywhere. There's ingredients all over the place. The sink is like overflowing. There's timers going out. Like it's a mess. And he's like, hey, are you okay? Like, you do not seem like yourself. And Daisy says to him, maybe I don't want to feel like myself. And Julian is like, what did he do to you? Do you want me to kill him? Like, I can kill Christian if you want. Would that make you feel better? And Daisy just kind of like scoffs and goes back to what she was doing. A few days later, when we get this, Daisy's still not doing well. She's up with Romeo. They're like making out in bed, and Rome comes in and is like, hey, my mom would really love to see you. Like, I'm going to dinner with her and she would love for you to come with me. And Daisy's like, I don't really want to go. Like, you should go, and then we can, you know, and then come back and, you know, we'll continue what we're doing. And Romeo's like, well, what are we doing? And Daisy's like, stop. And Romeo's like, I love you. And Daisy's like, don't do this to me. And he's like, no, but like, what are we doing? And Daisy says, I'm treading water. And she like watches as he shatters. Like, this breaks him because it's her admitting that she's just using him because she's trying to get over Christian. And like, it's like, it's mean. And she knows it's mean because like, it's the exact same thing she dumped Christian for, essentially. Like, stringing this man who like loves her so much along, while meanwhile she's in love with someone else. Like, that's why she dumped Christian. Like, Christian was in love with Magnolia and Daisy didn't want to be strung along anymore. She turns to Romeo and does the same thing to him. It's very cruel. And Romeo turns to her and says, then drowned. Like, you're treading water using me? Drown. Which is kind of rude. And then he leaves and Daisy's falling apart. Like, just having him not there, that was like the only thing holding her together in this like very temporary way. And she just is like crying, and she is so upset that she takes her arm and she knocks everything off of her vanity and like breaks the vanity mirror, and there's glass everywhere, and she starts cleaning it up, and she's cleaning it up with like her bare hands, stepping in glass, and she gets glass all over. She has glass all in her feet, and she has scratches on her hands, and she gets everything cleaned up, and then she sits there and she's cleaning herself up, and she has to give herself stitches. She like pulls the glass out of her feet and gives herself stitches and bandages herself up. And then she goes downstairs and Declan's down there and immediately is like, oh my gosh, what happened to you? Like, you are covered in blood and band-aids. And he's very worried. She's like sitting on the counter. He peeks under one of the band-aids and he's like, oh my god, did you give yourself stitches? He's like, what happened? And Daisy's like, I stepped in some glass. And Declan's like, how much glass did you step in? Was it an accident? And Daisy doesn't answer. Daisy is like, it wasn't on purpose, but it wasn't also entirely accidental. And this is the moment where Declan could have called Jules up and been like, hey, Daisy's not well. Can you come see her? Julian's like doing important crime boss business. Doesn't matter. I think we should have called him. Miguel is at the house. Call Miguel up and say, hey, Daisy needs a babysitter. I'm scared for her. We need someone to watch her. Instead, Daisy starts flirting. She already has a handle of vodka. She's pretty drunk. And she continues drinking. And Declan goes, hey, where's Rome? And Daisy's like, we're not on speaking terms right now. Again, calling Miguel, saying, somebody needs to come help Daisy right now. Daisy's like, will you come to bed with me? And Declan's like, you're drunk. I don't think that's a good idea. You're very, very drunk. And Daisy's like, are you scared of my brother? And Declan's like, no, I'm not scared of him. Which, you should be scared of Julian Haites. Sorry, like, he's a scary man. And he says, how drunk are you? And Daisy says, I'm very drunk, but I'm also very, very willing. And unfortunately, I do need to call the police on Declan. This is a no-go, my friends. Like, call the police, call Julian, call literally anyone. Do not sleep with this girl. I know we don't call ambulances and we don't call the police. Like, call Tiller. Call Romeo. Call Magnolia. Call Jack. Call literally anyone. Get yourself out of this situation. Do not do what you're about to do. Anyway. But he does. He sleeps with her, the idiot, and he says to her, Julian can never know. How long do you think that lasts? Not long, to let you know. Not long at all. Then BJ's back in town. He's back from his Amsterdam trip, and he's like, okay, I'm gonna go to this gala and see Magnolia. He like really misses her. He hasn't seen her in a few weeks. He's really excited to go. He winds up going with his mom. He goes with his mom. He gets there, and he's just like so eagerly waiting for Magnolia to walk through the door. But Magnolia doesn't walk through the door. Bridget does. And he goes to Bridget, and he's like, hey. And Bridget's like, she's not coming. Like, she's in Switzerland right now with her boyfriend. Like, she's not coming. And BJ's like, oh, I mean, like, that's cool, like, whatever, I was not even looking for her. And she's like, who are you with here anyway? And he's like, my mom. And Bridget goes, oh, does your mom know you're high? And BJ's like, no, obviously. She does not know I am high at this thing. If you could not blow my cover, that would be gorgeous. And then Bridget has, like, a real heart-to-heart with BJ. She's like, hey, BJ, like, we need to be done with this, okay? Like, you are self-destructing. She says, this is all self-sabotaging behavior. And BJ's like, no, it's not. And Bridget says, yeah, you did the one thing you knew that she would never forgive you for. And BJ's like, I don't even know why there is something that, like, she wouldn't forgive me for. Like, if she loved me like I love her, there would be nothing that she wouldn't be able to forgive me for. And Bridget is like, she's been able to forgive so much. She can forgive the cheating. She can forgive you sleeping around with everyone. She can forgive so much. But, like, the only thing that Magnolia would truly find unforgivable for you to do was to die. To do something so stupid that it would kill you. And BJ's like, well, I'm not dying. And Bridget says, don't interrupt me. She interrupts me. You weren't there. You didn't see her after. She hit me. I gave her sister an incredulous look. In front of my parents. And my doctor. In a hospital bed. Good. Bridget nods merrily. She should have. You overdosed. You nearly died. And you did it to yourself. And BJ's like, not on purpose. And Bridget says, it was worse than when you cheated on her. And I'll buy it for a second. Not for a second. After we broke up, I read the articles in the Daily Mail and the Sun that ran about her. And Bridget's like, well, after you overdosed, like, it was worse. It was worse than when you cheated on her. We had to take her to the hospital for dehydration. Like, she wouldn't eat. She wouldn't drink. She just sat in her room and cried for days and days and days. And BJ's a little rattled by this. He, like, didn't know that. Like, Magnolia never told him that. And Bridget says, you can't make someone love her how she loves you and then be as reckless as you are. It's not fair. I scowl at her. And she can't make me love her how I love her and then keep me at an arm's length because I once 3 years ago. And Bridget scoffs, you've than once. Let's get that straight first. So has she. She adds when I open my mouth to complain. I'm not saying she's blameless. She's not. She's more gormless than you are some days. I smile at her, a bit validated. But the root of what she's doing here is self-preservation. Bridget keeps going. She thinks if you die, she'll die. She gives a small shrug, happy with her conclusions. Bridget, I give her an uneven smile because she's being stupid. And obviously that's ridiculous, she says loudly over me. Big boots for her 21 years old, if I'm being honest. And untrue, but can you imagine if you had died, what that would have been like for her? Because she has. That is all she's imagined since it has happened. Takes a sip of her drink, plays it on a loop in her mind. And BJ is like, no, she doesn't. Bridget goes on, she does. She told me. And then here you are doing the one thing that caused it. Are you trying to hurt her? And BJ's like, no, obviously not. Are you trying to see how robust your love is? No. But it's more robust than you know, Little Parks. She gives me a long, curious look. Then what are you doing? Bridget is like, get it together. Get it together. Then we get to December 3rd. So it's December 3rd. Magnolia lands back in London on December 2nd, and she lies to Tom, says she's going to Devon for work, but she's actually coming up to her family home in Dartmouth. And the whole drive down there, she's thinking about how Tom is like truly the right guy for her and she should let BJ go. But she's also thinking about how she's never going to be able to love someone the way she loves BJ. Like, that is a once in a lifetime sort of love. And like, maybe she will have other loves, but they won't be this love, this like epic love story that she has with BJ. And she gets to Dartmouth, and she immediately goes to this willow tree that is at the back of their property, and BJ's already standing there waiting for her. And Magnolia says, you're here. And BJ says, of course I am, I promised. And Magnolia says, you've broken other promises before. BJ says, not this one. Then BJ says, I think about the night all the time, and he tells the story of this night that they were having a party up at the Dartmouth house when they were teenagers, and how the two of them were trying to sleep away from the party to hook up with each other, and they keep getting caught, and they like go to this room, and the lock on the door doesn't work, and so they wind up at this willow tree. They like leave the house, and they wind up at this willow tree, and they hook up out here, and this like family of ducks walks by, and he recounts this whole story. And then he says to Magnolia, how am I supposed to get over you with all of this stuff in between us? And Magnolia says, the trauma bonds, I'm quite glad over them sometimes, actually. And BJ says, I've had the best life being fucked up by you. Which is really sweet. And then like something in the air shifts. They can like both feel it. Something like comes back together again. They're in this place that is like such an important monument to their love and their life, and confess that they love each other, and they like start making out, and they spend the whole night together, and they cry and eat pizza and like sleep together and like kiss and just like fall back into each other's arms. And like they both talk about how they're like going home to each other, and how like being with the other person feels like coming home. And BJ says it's the best day of his life. And she falls asleep on his chest, and in the morning they decide they're good. Like they decide that like, okay, like we're gonna make this work. They're gonna bury the past, and even if BJ can't answer all the questions Magnolia has for him, like they're just gonna move forward into the future together, because like it's worth that. And so they like leave separately, and Magnolia knows that her like first order of business is talking to Tom and like letting Tom know that like things need to end between them because she's going to be back with BJ. And she's dreading this conversation. She knows it's going to be like rough. And the moment Tom sees her, he like immediately knows that she's back with BJ. There's just like something about how she's carrying herself and what she looks like. And Tom is like very sweet about it. And Magnolia is like, thank you so much for like loving me through this all. Thank you for being there and thank you for loving me. And then Tom says this last little thing. He says, I've got to say something and it might sound self-serving, but I'm not trying to be. I shake my head at him. You never are. He's gonna hurt you again, he tells me without flinching. My heart climbs up my throat a little. I shake my head. No. Yes, he nods. Tom. Magnolia. He shakes his head. I'm not telling you to change your mind. I couldn't anyway. You two are, he pauses looking for the word, bound. He says it like it's a hopeless thing, but he's right. We are. I can't undo that and I'm not trying. He shrugs. I'm just telling you so he's gonna hurt you again. And I don't know that I will be here when he does. Tom gives her that little warning and Magnolia, of course, like kind of writes it off because she's still in the high of them like getting back together again. And then we get BJ. He comes back to London and he immediately goes to his family's house. He goes to like his parents' home and Henry is there and he walks in and his family's about to have dinner and his mom's making him a plate and he his mom starts like asking him details about like what's happening with Jonah and Henry and like what's going on there. And then BJ's like, I have news. And his mom is like, good news or bad news? And BJ goes, Parks and I had sex. Which like, why did you announce it like that? Ew. But everyone is so excited. Everyone's so excited. They're cheering. His mom pops a bottle of champagne. They're like so glad BJ is finally back with Magnolia. Yay! And then back at the Parks household, the next morning, Magnolia comes downstairs and Bridget and Marcelly are at the counter. And Bridget is like, where have you been? And Magnolia's like, well, I was like up at the Dartmouth house. And Bridget is like, why? And Magnolia's like, long story. Can't explain that right now. And no one is asking her follow-up questions. They're just like, okay. Hope you had fun at our other house. And so Magnolia starts to like scratch at her neck where she has hickeys from BJ. And Bridget goes, is that a hickey from BJ? And Marcelly is like, what about Tom? And Bridget is so excited, but then she asks about the like unanswered question. She's like, did he finally answer those questions you had about when he cheated? And Magnolia is like, what closure could he give me more than loving me the way he does? And Bridget is like, that's very, very big of you. But like, you know, you're gonna have to choose to forgive him some days. Like forgiveness is not a feeling, like it's a choice that you're gonna have to actively make. And Magnolia is like, I know. And Bridget is just like so excited, and Magnolia explains they're gonna have like dinner with the full box set tonight and tell everyone, and Bridget is like, I want to come to this dinner. I'm like so excited about it. And that night is the dinner. We're so excited. Everyone is like, war is over, you know, like war is over. we're finally fixing things. Everything is gonna be gorgeous, right? Because this is a standalone. No. We get to dinner. Magnolia walks in, kisses BJ on the mouth and says, have you met my boyfriend? And everyone cheers and everyone's clapping and it's so exciting. Everyone's congratulating her and they like settle back down and Magnolia is like perched on BJ's lap and Paley walks in. She's like a little late. Paley walks in and immediately spots Magnolia and is like, oh my gosh, you guys are back together. Like, I'm so glad for you guys. Like, I'm so glad you guys made this work. And she goes to hug Magnolia and Magnolia smells her and is like, oh my gosh, you have a new perfume. And Paley's like, you haven't worn it in a while. And it smells like orange blossoms. And it is the scent of the night where BJ cheated. Like, Magnolia has this like smell etched into her brain. And here it is. And Magnolia goes, it was you. BJ immediately knows that Magnolia has figured out that he slept with Paley that night and he's freaking out. He grabs Magnolia and he can like feel her slipping through his fingers. He like finally had her back and like, it's over. It's over before it even started. And Magnolia was like, was it her? Did you sleep with my best friend? And BJ is like trying to like be like, Magnolia, please. And Paley is like, yes. And BJ tells the story of the night he cheated on her. BJ was drinking at this party. He wasn't super drunk, but he was feeling like weird. He was feeling off. And he stumbles into this bathroom and Paley followed him to just like check on him and make sure he was okay. And he just like started kissing her and he like wasn't thinking about Parks at all. He was thinking about how he wanted this, like how in this moment he was kissing this girl and he wanted to be kissing her. And they like end up in the bathtub together where they like wind up sleeping together. And immediately afterwards, he is freaking out. Like, the moment they finish, he, like, comes to, and he's like, oh my god, what did we just do? We have to go tell Magnolia. But Paley doesn't want to. Paley's like, oh, no, we can't tell her. Like, it's going to ruin her. We can't tell her. And Jonah walks into the bathroom. He sees what's happening. And BJ is like, I cannot lie to her. And I was like, you just cheated on her, so not seeing why the lying is a big deal. And BJ is like, I have to tell her. And Jonah's like, if you tell her, she will end it. And BJ's like, I can't lie to her. And Paley's like, I don't want to tell her. I can't tell her. I don't want to ruin our friendship. Like, I don't want to. And Jonah's like, okay, here's what's going to happen. You can tell her. Like, that's your prerogative, but you cannot tell her who. Like, that's Paley's story to tell. And BJ's like, okay, like, we can make that work. I will tell her that I cheated on her, but I won't say with whom. And we're back in the present, and Magnolia is just, like, devastated. She is frozen, and she realizes that both Jonah and Perry knew that it was Paley. That, like, Henry didn't, but, like, Jonah and Perry both did. And that is, like, another blow, too. And she winds up, like, she pushes BJ away from where he's, like, trying to grab at her. And she just starts running. And she's just, like, completely shattered. And, oh, she thinks to herself, like, her best friend and her best friend. Like, those are the two people who, like, betrayed her. The biggest betrayal of her life was between her two best friends. And BJ catches up, and he like grabs her, and he's like, no, like, you've already forgiven me for this. It's the same thing. I haven't done anything new. This is old news. And Magnolia's like, no. And BJ's like, I haven't done anything again. Like, I have not done anything again. This is old news. You've forgiven me. And Magnolia's like, no, because I thought it was a stranger all these years. Like, I thought it was an accident. Like, I thought this was something you accidentally stumbled into. But, like, it was my best friend. Like, how could you do that to me? And he's holding her, but she like, pulls away. And Magnolia says, you will never touch me again. And she rips off this whole book, she's been wearing his signet ring. And she finally takes it, and she rips it off, and she throws it. And then BJ's trying to get towards her again, but Henry pulls him back. And Joe winds up holding BJ as he's, like, sobbing. And Henry goes to Magnolia, and he's like, what do you need? And Magnolia's like, I need to get out of here. And Henry gets her a cab, and this is how the book ends. Can you die from a broken heart, do you know? And if I did, and they cut me wide open, would I bleed loving him? When they lift my heart out of my chest cavity to weigh it, does it weigh the same as his top lip? Is his name carved into my third rib to the left? Bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh. He's killing me. Loving him is killing me too. And I'm afraid, because how many loves do you really get in a lifetime? How many chances do you give it before you let it go? I'm letting it go. Where to? Asked the cabbie. I look out the window to the city that's filled to the brim with its daydream kisses and perfect poor decisions. All made with a man I think I used to know. To Heathrow. And I just feel like the A23 has bought this series from Jess Hastings. They have the rights. And I feel like when this scene happens, if we do not get Taylor Swift playing So Long London in the background, they did it wrong. We just see, like, the cab window. It's covered in raindrops. We're inside the car. We're looking at London passing us by. BJ is, like, crying on the street. Magnolia is sitting in the car, and it just starts playing. You know it's gonna hit. That's all we're gonna see from Magnolia. Well, no, we get to see Magnolia briefly, but we're gonna go to Daisy Haites. We've got a lot of Daisy Haites left, because Daisy is still up to things even once Miss Magnolia has left the city. First, we get to check in with Christian. It's a few days post Magnolia fleeing London, and Henry is, like, chatting with Christian. Essentially, this chapter serves because we're in this book, so, like, if you're reading this for the first time, you haven't been with Magnolia Parks for a while now at this point, and they just want to kind of, like, catch you up. This is essentially serves as, like, a recap of what just happened in the last book to the reader. But we do get a little bit more information. We learn that Henry and Christian had no idea anything was going on between, like, they didn't know about Paley, and they are, like, currently not really speaking a lot with BJ. Henry is very mad at BJ. And we also learn that Magnolia has flown to New York City. She is staying there with her family. Her family's flying out for Christmas. Bridget is out there with her. She's, like, no plans to come back to London anytime soon. It's the morning after that whole incident with Declan and Daisy. And Julian's returning home. Remember, he was gone all night. He actually wound up, like, hooking up with a girl. He has this, like, on again, off again sort of relationship with named Josette whenever she's in town. they wind up hooking up. He actually had a great night. He comes in and he is like chatting. Declan's downstairs in the kitchen, and Julian notices his chin is scraped, and he has also like a bunch of scrapes on his arm. And he's like, what happened to you, Declan? And he's like, I just went downstairs to the cellar and like accidentally scraped it. Like the cellar downstairs, the wine cellar is like all stone. And Julian doesn't think anything of it. He just like moves on. And then he winds up talking with, I think, Kikoa and maybe Miguel are also in the kitchen. He winds up talking with both of them, learns that Daisy and Rome broke it off last night, and like Daisy might be a little not so well, and so he goes upstairs to check on her to make sure that like she's okay. He like walks in the room and like clearly it like has that smell of like, you know how I don't know if you've ever been around or been someone who's drank like way too much, and the next day you can like smell it in your sweat. You can like smell it coming out of your pores, and it's like a gross smell. And he's like, oh, you clearly were like drinking last night. And there's also like a mostly finished bottle of vodka on her nightstand, and he is like, hey Daisy, did you drink this whole bottle of vodka by yourself? And she's like, maybe. Like she's clearly not doing well. And he's like, hey, are you okay? Are you good? And Daisy's like, I'm fine. But then he notices Daisy has a scraped up shoulder. It's like really scraped up, and he's like, what happened there? And Daisy's like, oh, I scraped it in the cellar. And Julian's like, oh, the cellar. What did you wind up getting from the cellar? Anything? And she's like, oh, I decided not to mix anything with the vodka, so I just stuck to vodka. Didn't actually wind up getting a bottle of wine. And Julian immediately realizes that if both Declan and Daisy are scraped up from the cellar, that they probably were up to something. And he figures out that Declan has slept. Last night, Declan slept with his very drunk, because clearly Daisy was not well last night, sister. And he immediately storms downstairs and he says, hey Declan, did you sleep with my drunk baby sister? And Declan just goes, yes. And Julian is like, while she was shit-faced, like while she was very, very drunk. And Daisy has run after him because Daisy's caught on to what's going on and is trying to like pull Julian back, trying to like explain what happened and trying to be like, no big deal, please stop freaking out, my friend. But Julian is like focused on Declan, and Declan is like, yeah. Like he's like, yes, she was very drunk. And Julian looks over at Daisy and he can tell that she's like wrecked. Like she is like already starting to like kind of like tear up. She's just like messy. She like doesn't look good, and she hasn't looked good. And he just starts beating the absolute crap out of Declan. He starts like beating him up. He like kind of doesn't, he's not like fully in tune with himself. He's like punching Declan. He like throws him through like a grandfather clock. Like it is messy, and Daisy is screaming at him, and Kikoa and Miguel are trying to pull Julian off of Declan, but they like can't. They're like not strong enough to get him off of him. And then he finally stops, and Declan is in like very bad shape. Like he's not doing well, and Daisy's like checking him over, but she's like crying, and she's having a hard time like doing anything because she's crying so hard. And Daisy's like, he needs to go to the hospital. Like that you almost killed him. Like that's how and she's like assessing him, and she's like broken ribs, and he has like glass through his stomach, and she's like listing off his injuries so that Kikoa can like report them to the doctor they're calling, because remember, they do not do ambulances, so they're calling their crime doctor. And they're gonna take him over to Merrick's house, and Merrick is gonna like fix him all up. And Kikoa and Miguel, like, she goes to try to, like, help Declan, and Declan, like, is like, stay away from me, to Daisy. I'm not touching you anymore, which is the move. And Kikoa and Miguel go and pick him up, and before Miguel leaves, he's like, hey, Daisy, are you going to be okay here without me? Like, are you going to be here alone? And, like, the implication is clear. Like, do you feel safe with Julian? Julian is not acting like a safe person right now. Do you feel safe here anyway? And Daisy is like, yeah, it's fine. And she goes upstairs to her room, and Julian is like, what did I do? Then a few days pass, and we tune in to Julian, and he's going to the hospital to check in on Declan. He feels he's complicated feelings about his situation that has just occurred with Declan, because the thing is, obviously he overreacted. Like, almost killing his second command was maybe not the move, but also Declan was very clearly in the wrong, and he still feels that, like, quite firmly. Like, that wasn't okay. He knows that Declan was completely sober, and Daisy was very, very drunk, and he's like, it wouldn't have been okay if it was literally anyone. You know, like, Declan is still his second. Also, Daisy has said that she won't talk to him until he apologizes to Declan. And as a rule, Julian doesn't say sorry. Like, that's not something that a gang lord does, except to Daisy. Like, obviously he apologizes to Daisy because they have more of a familial relationship. But, like, he is in this, like, really tricky spot where, like, he knows that he, like, maybe oversteps, but also he's, like, he is like, yeah, Declan did the wrong thing. Like, that was not okay, not appropriate. So this is what Julian says to him. She's my sister, and she's a mess. Everyone knows she's a mess right now. You've said it to me yourself. He's back to looking out the window. You're supposed to protect her, and you slept with her while she was drunk. I stare over at him, incredulous, have the urge to put a pillow over his face, fight it. You and me, we've literally killed people for less. Jules, she came on to me, he tells me, and I give him a look. Yeah, I don't care, man. Would she have done it if she was sober? These days, he pulls a face that I don't like. Shrugs a bit gruff. Yeah, probably. I pull my head back. Say that again. I dare you. His eyes drop from mine. I went too far, I tell him, but so did you. And I walk out. Like, this is a really complicated situation because, again, Julian is like, you were in the wrong. I was also in the wrong. Everyone was in the wrong. But, like, I'm not going to apologize to you because, like, you were in the wrong and maybe more in the wrong than me. The lighting in here is so vile. Ugh. Anyway, I'm sorry the lighting is really bad in the second half of this video. Okay. Then we switch to Daisy's perspective, and it's about a week out from the beating. Declan is still in the hospital, and Daisy is still not really speaking with Julian. Things are, like, pretty tense between the two of them. Things are kind of, like, quiet in the house in general because everyone is, like, a little bit on edge. Everyone's a little scared of each other. No one really wants to hang out with Daisy because Daisy was kind of the impetus for everything that happened, and everyone's a little scared of her because she's, like, being so messy right now. And everyone's obviously terrified of Julian because he just almost killed one of them. So, like, the house is really quiet in general, and she's just feeling, after losing Christian and then Romeo as well, she's just, like, really feeling grief and heartache in, like, a very real, very serious, heavy way. And at this point, I was actually thinking about the fact that, like, this is another one of the reasons that I feel like I'm not super Team Christian, is because in these moments of breakup, I feel like we have this massive disparity between Daisy and Christian. Like, obviously, both of them are kind of, like, torn up over this breakup, but Daisy is, like, ruined. Daisy is just, like, a mess on, like, a puddle on the ground that can't do anything. And Christian, like, is, like, I'm a mess, but then he, like, seems to, like, mostly be living his life in, like, a fairly ordinary way. And maybe he's just, like, not as emotive in his writing as Daisy is, but I just don't love that disparity. Because honestly, if someone is going to love, like, in a relationship in a book, if we're going to have one character that is, like, more in love than the other, like, it better be the boy, you know? Like, I'm just not here for a book where the girl is pining after a man. That's embarrassing. Stand up. Anyway, Julian has apologized to her, although he did say he would do it again. If, like, the same thing happened, he's like, I actually wouldn't change anything, though. So, like, sorry, but also not sorry. It's a little confusing, but, like, honestly, I have to support it. I do support it a little bit. Sorry. Anyway, Daisy has decided to go visit Declan in the hospital. It's, like, the first time she's going there. He's, like, healing up. He's going to be able to leave the hospital fairly soon. It's about a week post getting beat the heck up. And on the way there, she has this conversation with Miguel over, like, kind of what's happening, because he's like, Daisy, what is the deal? Like, you are, like, self-destructing and, like, kind of taking down everyone around you. And she's like, I just, like, never have loved someone the way I loved Christian, and, like, I never will again. There's just this, like, this once in a lifetime sort of feeling to the love she has with Christian. Okay, why? I just, like, don't get it. Like, I get Magnolia and BJ, like, that makes sense to me, and I just don't get Christian and Daisy. Anyway, so, they get there, she goes up to talk to Declan, she tries to kind of, like, hang out with him, she's like, do you want me to sit with you? And he's like, no, like, he's very polite to her, but, like, it's very clear that he would like to keep his distance, like, he's a little freaked out by her, and he does keep making jokes about, like, how she is, like, coming on to him, and she's like, I do feel bad, it was, like, definitely partly my fault, and he's like, no, like, I really should have been responsible in this situation, like, everyone's a little bit to blame. Sorry, Daisy's not to blame, that's, like, the whole point of this situation. I mean, not that she, like, is completely in the clear, like, maybe she should feel, like, a tinge of guilt, like, yeah, Declan should have been, as the sober one, as the adult one, as the one that, like, is charged with, like, protecting her, like, he should have been the one to shut that down. Again, he should have called literally anyone else. He should have been like, Miguel, can you come get Daisy? She's being a weirdo. Okay? Like, there were solutions, and Declan chose not to take any of them. Anyway, she leaves. She doesn't hang out with Declan very long, and she goes, like, out of his hospital room, and Tiller is, like, there, and she's like, okay. And they get in the elevator together, and they're, like, chatting, and Tiller's is like, why is your brother second in command in the hospital? Like, why is Declan in here? And Daisy is like, he slept with me. Is that why you came here to ask me? And Tiller is like, no, I'm here because I'm beginning to think your brother is flying off the handle. I'm like a little bit worried about him. He's doing more crimes than usual and in like kind of a sloppy, messy way that I know you wouldn't like approve of. Like he hired Rosin McMathin's men. Like I know that. And Daisy's like, no, he didn't. Even though like she knows that he did. Like those were the men at the museum heist, if you remember. And Daisy's like, I like don't. And Tiller's like, yeah, he did. Also, he's now meeting up with Mata Tassel, which is another person off of that like no-go list. These crime people who do like really bad crime and not just sort of bad crime, you know, the no-go list. And they get outside of the hospital and they're headed to the car. Miguel is waiting to drive Daisy home, and Tiller asks Miguel if he can drive Daisy home, essentially so he can have like a conversation with her with no ears on them, with nobody listening in. And Miguel is like very, very, very reluctant. Like that's he's gonna let his like Daisy drive home alone with a cop. Seems like a bad idea. But Daisy's like, it'll be fine. Like, and so he agrees, and he gives them like very explicit instructions on like how like this is the route we're gonna take to get home. And if you don't go off of this route at any point, I will kill you on sight. Like I'm gonna be following you, and if like you do anything suspicious, boom, dead. Okay? And obviously I love that because Miguel, top tier side character. We've got like Rebecca Barnes, Christian and Jonah's mom. I love her so much. And Miguel, also love him so much. Just like the bestie best. And they get in the car and Tiller asks her like, are you okay? And Daisy's like, okay, you got me in this car so you could ask me that. And Tiller kind of like shrugs. Like he doesn't deny it, but like he also isn't like, yes, that is the only thing I asked you about. And Daisy goes on, whatever you think my brother did, it wasn't him. Like we just finished day 7 of our Christmas movie marathon countdown. Like he might be like being a little messy right now, but like he's still my brother at his core. Like he's still the person that I grew up with, because this like Christmas movie marathon is something they do every year. And she's like, it's been a little weird this year because, you know, of how he almost murdered a guy for sleeping with me, but in general, like still the same vibes. Like we're still doing the same family traditions. He's still Julian. And then they kind of like talk about this for a little bit, and Tiller asks her to like recount the movies, and they're like kind of bickering about them. And then like Tiller like kind of jokingly asks her on a date, which seems like kind of inappropriate. Like we get less of Tiller so far in this book. We have like a lot of Tiller at the beginning, and then kind of like a Tiller drought in the middle of this book, and now we're gonna get some good Tiller in these chapters. But like this is so inappropriate. Like his job is literally, he's like in charge of the case against her older brother. Like, I'm sorry, you can't ask her on a date. Like, that is incredibly inappropriate. This is just a reminder that like Tiller is objectively terrible at his job. Like he's so bad at his job, and I don't understand how this American man who's like, I also like just don't in general understand how this like fairly young American man moved to London to join the police force. Like that just seems like kind of a weird move to me. Do they just like let people who like just moved here join the police? Like that kind of seems strange. I don't know how policing works, and I'm not trying to like be like anti-foreigner, but like I don't know, I feel like it takes a while to get your citizenship, and I feel like unless you're a citizen, it's weird to me that you'd want to be a police officer. Anyway, I don't know how Tiller has his job, nor how he's kept it, because he seems like he has a pretty important job, since he's like the head of the investigation of this like the biggest gang lord in London, and he's really bad at it. I just don't know, maybe times are tough in the London police force. Tills is their best option. Anyway, they get home and they've talked about literally nothing. Like, I'm glad they had like a lovely little chat. It's not a long drive home from the hospital, but still. And then as they pull in, Tiller says, I mostly asked to drive you so I could see if you were actually okay. And Daisy's like, okay, what's the verdict? Am I okay? And Tiller is like, I don't know. And then he like kind of like sighs and is like, I don't know how I got so off track in my life that I am alone in a car with a gang lord's sister. And Daisy's like, I don't know either. You invited me here. Like, you're the one who asked me to come here. And Tiller is like, I know, but like I'm meant to be pulling information out of you. Like I'm supposed to be like interrogating you, and all I'm trying to do is figure out how to kiss you. Maybe you would think that as someone who is Team Tiller that I would be less inclined to bully this man so relentlessly, but like he's just a silly goofy man sometimes. He's obsessed with Daisy in the right way, and we'll talk about next book particularly why I think that I'm such a big Team Tiller fan. But in this book, He's kind of a silly, goofy guy. Maybe I should be Team Romeo. Honestly, the more I talk, the more I'm like, actually, maybe Romeo's the move. Or maybe Daisy should get a new boyfriend that's not currently pictured in the book. I'd be okay with that as well. Daisy's like surprised that he wants to kiss her because she understands that would be wildly inappropriate. And she goes, you don't want to be with me. The last guy I was with, my brother beat within an inch of his life. Like, Declan is literally in the hospital because he wanted to be with me. And Tiller is like, might be worth it. And Daisy goes, it's not. And he goes, you might be worth it. Which is a good line. Even though this is a silly, goofy time. A few weeks pass, and it's Christmas now. Christmas, we are with Christian on Christmas, and we hear like just like in a couple sentences that BJ went to New York for Christmas to try to talk to Magnolia. Like, the boys like really hyped him up, and they were like, okay, you can go out there, you're gonna like see her, you're gonna talk to her, you're gonna make everything better, you're gonna make everything right, it's gonna be awesome. And he flies out there, and Magnolia won't even see him. Magnolia won't even like come downstairs and talk to him at all. And so Christian's like, so that situation's not going super well. But he's excited because Christmas is when he goes to church, and he knows who else goes to church on Christmas. That is right. He will be at church at the same time as the Haites, because all the crime families go to church together on Christmas. Okay? They go to St. Agnes's church. And he walks in and he immediately sees her, and it's a very exciting time, and he winds up sitting right next to her, which, like, who let that happen? Miguel, shove her out of the way. Julian, give him an elbow to the jaw. Like, come on. Be looking out for Daisy. But anyway, he winds up sliding right next to her, and he spends the whole service trying to, like, just, like, graze her hand and, like, brush a shoulder against her shoulder, just like these little touches. They like speak to each other briefly, as in like they're like, hello, Merry Christmas. And just like, please leave this girl alone, let her have Christmas service in peace. She just came here to sing Away in a Manger. Like, she was just here to sing some Christmas hymns, which are the ones that slap in a pretty church, okay? And then she's gonna go home and eat Christmas dinner, and she doesn't need your nonsense. Anyway, as they're leaving, Daisy tries to like flee out of there, get out of there as fast as possible, but Christian like chases her, catches up with her right in front of the church, and everyone is like leaving, and they're having this like big fight in front of the church as all these families are leaving on Christmas. And Christian is like, please, I just need to talk to you. And he like grabs her, and Daisy turns around and says, touch me again. She's like, we don't touch. And then the rest of Daisy's crew kind of like shows up. They like trickle out of the church, and Declan shows up and is like standing over off to the side. But he looks terrible. He looks like a hot mess. Christian says, because we're in Christian's brain for this, he looks like he went through a garbage disposal. Okay, gorgeous. And Christian says to him, what happened to you? And Daisy like immediately looks like very nervous and like guilty, and Christian realizes that like they must have slept together. I don't know how you put two and two together. Like, I might have assumed that like Daisy beat him up. I don't know why it would be like, clearly they slept together and then he got beat up for that. But Christian is able to do some pretty amazing mental gymnastics, and he's able to figure it out. And then Christian turns to Daisy and she says, what are you doing? And Daisy starts crying. Daisy's like sobbing. And again, all these people are trying to leave church on Christmas Day. It's busy out there. And she shouts, getting over you. And Christian's like, can we just talk for like a minute? And Daisy is like, no. And she shoves him like hard. Like, this is not like shoving him to get him away from her, from like shoving her like the start of a fight. Like, she's ready to like beat him up. And then Julian comes and stands behind her. He's going to back her up. If like we're going to fight, Julian's ready. If Daisy wants to fight this man, Julian will be there to, like hold his hands back so she can punch him a few times in the stomach. Because he's a good brother. Most of the time. Okay? Keep that in your nog that he is a good brother most of the time as we continue into this, because he does make some choices. Anyway, and then Jonah comes out and he sees that like essentially we're about to have like a little mini gang war. We do not need to start like a gang war in the middle of London on Christmas Day between Daisy and Christian, because it might start that, because remember, they're both from like major crime families. We have the Haites and we have the Barnes, the Jimenezes. And so Jonah comes out and he's like, Christian, we need to leave. Get in the car. As like Julian stands behind Daisy. And then Christian says again, please, Daisy, like I just want to talk to you. And Jonah is like, get in the car. Get in the effing car right now. Christian, stop it. We can't do this right now. Not in front of this church, in front of all these people. Someone's going to end up shooting you. Okay? Get in the car. It's embarrassing. And so they get in the car and they leave. Daisy goes home. She spends all of Christmas just getting very, very drunk, because she is just like, again, just like that, like ripped open the wound of any, I mean, had she done any healing? I don't know. it was just re-injuring almost to see Christian again. And so a few weeks pass. We don't get to see these weeks. I'm assuming it's like the week between Christmas and New Year's. It's probably they just lay around. I feel like everyone kind of just lays around in that week. It's kind of like an imaginary week that is dead. And so I think Daisy probably just like cried and slept. Go off. But New Year's Eve, Julian has a really large party. Every year he throws this huge party at the compound. It is one of the most exclusive parties of the year. It is one of the best parties of the year. Like, it is notorious, and it's super exclusive in that, like, there's a very specific guest list, and if you are not on the guest list, you are not walking in those doors. Like, there are no +1s. There are no, like, do you know who I am at the door? Like, if you are not on the list, you are not coming inside their house. Okay? And Daisy is coming downstairs. The party is kind of, like, already in swing, and the first person she spots is Christian. And she immediately goes over to Julian, who's, like, currently flirting with a girl. She goes to Julian, starts yelling at him, and is like, why is he here? Why did you invite him? Like, Julian is continuing to flirt with this girl, and is like, sorry about my sister, like, she doesn't have the best manners because I raised her from the time that I was like very young. Like, he's trying to use Daisy as like, I don't know, like pity, earned compassion points. It is kind of a funny little moment. But then Daisy is like, continues to yell at him, and Julian is like, you are just being like ridiculous at this point. Like, you're just being a chicken. Like, you need to talk to him. And Daisy's like, I'm not a chicken. And Julian's like, perfect, then go talk to him. And she's like, it's not a chicken because I know that, like, if I talk to him, he's gonna hurt me. And Julian is like, Daisy, I wouldn't have invited him here. I wouldn't have made you talk to him if I thought that this was the thing that was gonna hurt you in the long run. Like, I would never do anything intentionally to hurt you. You know that. I think this will be for the better if you, like, get some, like, if you guys can just talk it out. And Daisy gets mad, and she's in a huff, and she walks, like, the other direction and goes down, like, towards the kitchen, I believe. And who's in the kitchen but Romeo? And she's like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna kill Julian. Why did she invite Romeo too? Like, Romeo's here, Christian's here, like, Tiller is not here because you can't bring a cop to your cool party. Okay? Sorry, Tills. And Daisy's like, why does my brother hate me so much? And Rome is like, you know, like, I don't think he hates you, and I do think, like, you need to go talk to Christian. Like, you do need that. Like, you clearly fell in love with this boy, and, like, you need to go talk to him and, like, get some closure for yourself. Like, this is for you. Like, in the end, even if you don't want to do it, like, Julian is always looking out for you. And he, like, kisses her on the forehead, and it's a very sweet moment. And again, I'm like, maybe I am Team Rome. But Daisy, like, finally is like, okay, fine, I'm not gonna be able to make it through this night without talking to Christian. So she goes and she grabs him and she brings him upstairs to her room, just, like, to have a conversation somewhere a little bit quieter. And she's like, I really don't want to talk to you. I, like, don't have anything to say to you. I don't want to hear anything you have to say. But apparently I have to have a conversation with you. And Christian is like, I do have some things I would like to say to you. And Daisy is like, you made me fall in love without you. And Christian is like, is that what you think? You're my best friend, Daisy. And Daisy's like, okay, great. Best friendship is not the same thing as loving me. Like, you made me love you by myself. Christian starts to, like, say, like, no, Daisy, I love. And Daisy freaks out. She, like, is like, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. Like, stop. And Christian starts confessing that he didn't know what love felt like. Like, he didn't know that it could be as nice as it felt with Daisy. That the only love he had ever experienced was with Magnolia. And with Magnolia, it had always been this, like, very tortured, fraught thing. But with Daisy, like, it felt lovely. It felt, like, really nice and good. And he didn't know what that meant. And Daisy's like, well, I didn't like how loving you made me feel. And Christian was like, I don't think love was the problem. I think the fact that you thought I didn't love you back was the thing that was, like, really, like, a bad time. And Daisy's crying now, and she's like, I don't know how to believe you. Like, I don't believe you. And Christian just, like, says it, like, I love you. And Daisy at that moment decides to call for Miguel. She's like, screams for Miguel. Miguel obviously pops right in and is like, hello, what's up? And she's like, please remove Christian from the premises. He's hurting me. And Miguel is like, Daisy, come on. And she's like, no, Miguel, like, your job is to protect me, and he is hurting me. Like, get him out of my house. And Miguel is like, okay, come on, Christian. Like, we have to go. Like, and he pulls Christian out, and Daisy just, like, spends the rest of the night, like, crying. And she winds up crying, like, for days. We go into the next chapter, and Daisy is like, I hoped Christian would call, but, like, I'm also glad he didn't. Like, maybe this can be, like, there's, like, a finality. Like, we did talk. I don't feel like I have closure. I feel like I'm messier now than I was before. But, like, maybe from here we can heal. And she's just, like, so heartbroken. And, like, she thinks about the fact that knowing he loved her this whole time makes it even worse. Like, there's a sense that, like, she that it was over, it was ruined in a way that, like, she can't fix, and there was potential that it could have been something beautiful, and, like, that potential was, like, squandered. And she just, like, cries her way into the new year, and, like, she winds up, like, sleeping in Julian's bed, like, just being with Julian the whole time. It's very sweet. Okay, I'm gonna read you a chunk from this because I love this so much. I spend New Year's Day crying in my brother's bed. Declan makes a joke about how he's pretty sure this isn't the sort of crying in bed Julian had imagined he'd rig in the new year with, which was sort of funny but mostly gross. But I was crying too much to respond. Julian threw a pillow at him and told him to get out. Julian's got a black eye and a busted lip. I don't know when he had time to get into a fight, but his knuckles are raw, and that's not from Declan, so I know he's been fighting again. Which means that he's stressed. He doesn't say much. He wouldn't know what to say anyway. He's never been in love before. He just sits, keeps clicking, yes, I am still here on the remote whenever Netflix asks. There's friends playing on a loop in the background. And he leaves bowls of M&Ms on his bedside table like I'm a weird stray cat. But mostly he just lays next to me on his phone. But occasionally he'll glance over, give me a sad smile, and kiss me on the forehead. And I know it doesn't sound like much. I know. But if my heartbreak was a fever, my brother is the cool cloth they'd lay on my forehead. That is maybe my favorite line from this book, is if my heartbreak was a fever, my brother is the cool cloth they would lay on my forehead. I love it so much. I think it is, like, so, like, sweet, and, like the core of the relationship between Daisy and Julian is just this caring, just, like, solid one, and I love them so much. It's my favorite relationship in this whole book, is the brother-sister relationship between Jules and Daisy, and I love that scene. And I want us to hold in our hearts this version of Julian, because from here on out, Julian only makes bad choices. Okay? Great. I'm glad we're all holding that in our heart. Because a few days later, it's time to kidnap Ezra Brown's kids. Julian is, like, very nervous about that. He doesn't feel great about it. He knows Daisy would be furious if he found out, like, they don't mess with kids, and, like, here they are about to mess with kids, but, like, he knows he has to get this money back. Like, he needs to get the $70 million. Like, it is so important to, like, his legacy as a gang lord. And that is crucial. And so they kidnap these two kids straight from school. There's a boy who's, like, 6 and a girl who's, like, 8. We learn their names are Edie is the girl's name and Philip is the boy's name. And the girl immediately reminds him of Daisy. She's the, like, exact age that Daisy was when Daisy's parents were killed. And there's just, like, immediately, every time this little girl speaks, he just sees little Daisy. Like, he cannot help himself. And that is just, like, tearing him up. Because he knows how traumatized Daisy was by seeing her parents killed, and, like, he knows that he's inflicting some level of trauma on these kids as well, and he just, like, he can't help but see his sister in their faces. And they get in there and they take them to this big empty warehouse that the Brimberlows all own, and, like, the little boy is crying, but the girl is, like, very stoic and thoughtful and just, like, tracking him and following him, and she's just, like, a logical, thoughtful person. She's like a little baby Daisy, okay? And once they're settled, Julian starts talking to them, and he's like, hey guys, what do you like to eat? And girl, and Edie is like, meals our parents cook for us in our home. And Julian is like, I really don't think that your dad is the cooking type. I've met your father, and that doesn't seem like that. That's actually the vibe. But a hilarious line to be kidnapped. And then he asks their names, and again, we learn that they're Edie and Philip. And then Julian is like, hi, I'm Julian. And Kiko is like, why are you telling them your name, my friends? My sweet, sweet, sweet boss. Like, normally we don't tell the kidnap victims our, like, names, our home addresses. I mean, like, obviously the Haites, everyone's gonna know that Julian is, like, behind this, but, like, do we need to be like, hi? He also doesn't have his mask on anymore. And Edie is like, why have you taken us? And Julian is like, your dad owed me something and he isn't paying, so I'm incentivizing him by taking you guys. Do you know what that means? And Edie is like, yeah, I'm not stupid. I know what incentivizing means. And again, just, like, such a Daisy vibe. And then Philip, the little boy, is like, you mentioned what food we wanted. I would like a McDonald's. I have a little request, and I request McDonald's. And Julian's like, okay, perfect. What do you want? Let this guy know, and he will go get you anything he wants. And Philip starts, like, listing off his order, and he wants, like, a bunch of stuff, and he wants, like, soda and, like, you know, a treat. And his sister is like, we aren't allowed to have that sort of thing, Philip. And Julian is like, you know, today we might let it slide. Since you guys did get kidnapped, we're gonna allow you to have Fanta. You're welcome. And Kikoa pulls Julian aside and is like, okay, my friend, you need to leave. Like, I know every time you look at them, you see Daisy. I see it too. Like, I understand that. But, like, we need these kids to be a little scared. And right now they are, like, just on, like, vacation with their weird uncle that they just met. Like, you're buying the McDonald's and, like, doing a whole song and dance and making them feel more at ease. Like, we need, when we like call for the ransom, we need these kids to seem nervous. Like, we need them to seem a little scared. Like, we're not going to hurt them, but we need to, you know, be like kidnappers. Okay? Like, we're not here to be babysitters. So you need to get out. And Julian is like, okay, I understand. And he starts to leave. And as he's leaving, he hears Edie go, like, where's Julian? And then she screams his name. She like shouts it, and he can tell that she's like scared. That she's scared that now that he's gone, this like nice man, then and now it's just a scary man. And he does not turn around and go back. He just like leaves. Jules, it wasn't too late. You could have turned around and been like, Edie and I are best friends. Then we shoot over to Miss Daisy Haites. And Daisy is at the house, and she gets a knock on the door. It's Tills, and she's like, hey, Tills, what's up? And Tiller is not in a good mood today. He's not in a good flirty fun mood today. And she says, and he, is like, are you alone? And she's like, yes, Miguel is down in the gym, but like, besides that, like, it's just me in the house. And he's like, I need to talk to you somewhere where no one will be able to hear us. And she says, okay. And she pulls him into a bathroom, turns the shower on, because like, is their whole house bugged? I don't know. Whatever. They go in the bathroom, turn the shower on, and he shows her a manila folder with a photograph of a dead person who has like clearly been like in a fight to the death, has been like beaten to death. And Tiller is like, it's Julian, not the dead person, the person who killed the person. And Daisy is like, no, even though she does suspect it was him. She knows Julian has been fighting. And apparently these fighting end in people dying. Like, he gets carried away and just like murders people on accident. I feel like I did not notice this until I was literally like going over my notes. I've been through this book like multiple times now. I like read it initially, then I reread it before the newest Daisy Haites came out, and then I did notes on it, and then I went through these notes to like make the like script that I am going through, like my like outline of notes that I'm referencing as I go through this. And I feel like I did not notice until the outline that the implication here is that Julian just like accidentally murders people, just like for fun as a hobby. And I feel like I maybe just like put that out of my mind, that like the implication is that, because like Jess Hastings always talks, I like have listened to multiple interviews with her, and like people love Julian more than they love BJ. People like love Julian, like I love Julian, like I adore Julian, and Jessa's always like, yeah, people are like much more willing to look past Julian's murdering than they are to look past BJ's cheating. She's like, that was like the weirdest thing that I did not expect when I wrote this book, is the level at which people will forgive Julian for doing literal murder, and they will not forgive BJ from cheating on his girlfriend literally one time. And I always find that very interesting, because I feel like, yeah, that's like something that if like you're involved in like romance book conversations, like cheating is something that people do not want to read at all, but like murdering is like something that people are totally cool with. I don't think I realized, like, I knew Julian obviously murdered people. We like watch him murder people on page, but I thought there were people that like he needed to murder, not just hobby murdering. Hobby murdering is kind of weird. I don't know if I love that. I don't know. I'll probably be able to move faster. Then Tiller is like, there are 5 other bodies. There are 5 other bodies that look just like this one that I'm showing you. And Daisy is like, are you saying that my brother is a serial killer? And Tiller says, no, I'm saying that your brother is a gang lord, and people are dispensable to him. And like, yeah, a little bit. And then he passes her another sheet of paper, and it's proof of a wire transfer between Julian and Amata Tosel for like a couple $1 million. And Daisy is like, you are lying. Like, this isn't real. Like, that we don't do this. And Tills is like, I'm not. And then he shows her a picture of Edie and Philip, the kids that Julian is actively kidnapping in this moment. And he explains that he thinks that Julian took these kids because he was recently wired $70 million from Ezra Brown. And Daisy starts to do the math in her head, and she knows that the Klimps they stole for Ezra was worth more than 70 million. Like, that is not correct. That's not the amount that he was owed. And now she's like worried. Now she's a little stressed, because if Julian was owed money, that could be a reason to kidnap these kids, even though it's against the rules. And Daisy says to Tiller, we don't do that. And Tiller says, I know you don't do that. And Daisy's like, no, he wouldn't do it. And Tiller is like, he already has, and I need you to help me get them back. Like, I need you to make sure those kids get home safe. And Daisy starts to like cry a little bit. She's like embarrassed of like crying in front of Tiller, but there's something in her that kind of like shatters at the thought of Julian breaking these rules, of breaking like kind of one of the more foundational ones, which is like, we don't touch kids. And she thinks to herself, my brother is the glue that holds me together, because if Julian is bad, what does that make me? They're so closely knit and bound together that like the thought of him like turning against these standards they held for themselves is tearing her up a little bit. And then I'm going to read you kind of a longer chunk from this section because I think it's quite good. In this section, she's like talking about how they started to go to church more once Julian was in charge and her parents were dead. And as like kind of like, I think a way to like counterbalance things, she says. But she talks about one time when she was at church and someone passes her the 10 Commandments. When I was 13, one of the sisters at the church gave me a slip of paper with the 10 Commandments on it. I think she knew who I was. I think most people know who I am. Julian's never tried to hide it. He's good at covering up his bad tracks and never getting caught. Anyway, she gave me the commandments, and I'm not sure if she gave them to me thinking it would straighten my family out. Like, I'd read them, and I'd be like, oh, shoot, we aren't supposed to kill people? But I read them. I still have them. Reading them now is worse than before, because we are worse than we were back then. If we're going 1 through 10, assuming 1 is the most important, Jules has never failed there to the best of my knowledge, nor have I. I've never had another god. I've also never made an idol, neither has Julian. Crafting isn't our family's strong suit. We're 2 in so far, so good. But it's kind of downhill from here. Have we taken the Lord's name in vain? Probably. Worked on a Sunday? Definitely. Honored our parents? Absolutely not. Murdered? Yes. Adultery? Yes. Steal with our eyes closed. Lied? Yes. Coveted? Wanted what isn't ours? Practically a Haites family staple. I say we, as in the plural pronoun, because Julian's sins are mine, I think. I think the blood he spills stains our whole family. I know before I said I didn't like to think that. That the whole thing about the sins of the father falling to his children, but now with some time and some space and some kidnappings between us, I think I need to think that that's how it works. Because if his sins stained both of us, then maybe I can cancel it out for both of us. And here's what worries me. Those rules, they're like a basic how-to for humanity, and he's failing them, which means I'm failing him. I'm my brother's keeper, and I've lost him. I love it. I love the religion metaphors in Daisy every single time. Okay, so Daisy has decided that she is going to participate in this rescue of these children. She's like, okay, again, it is really about like canceling out Julian's wrongdoing. Like, she is not in it to save these kids necessarily, although like, that's fine. She's in it to save her brother. Like, her brother's not going to see it that way, obviously, but like, she is participating in this to save her brother. Because if anything happens to these kids, she knows that the blame would be on him, and she can't let that happen to him. And so she sneaks out of the house. She meets Tiller a few blocks away, and his partner Tim is in the car. And like, Tiller is an idiot and didn't warn Daisy that like he was gonna have another man in the car. So Daisy immediately pulls a gun on him because she initially is like, "Is this a setup? Like, did you just set me up, Tiller?" And Tiller's like, "Whoa, this is just my partner. Like, we're going to an armed like situation. Like, obviously, I'm not gonna go in without backup." And Daisy is like, "I don't like this." But then again, Tiller promises that nothing is going to happen to her brother. That's the only way that Daisy would participate in this, is if she knew that her brother would be like in the clear, obviously. Daisy's not entirely sure where they may be keeping the kids. They've been like clearly like pretty secretive about this portion of the things. They've not been talking about this openly at the kitchen table. And also, Daisy has been incredibly out of it. She has not been paying attention. She has been really like just like floating in her grief. And as they're driving, Tim, the partner, starts playing AC/DC's Highway to Hell because he says, "It's our pregame song." And Daisy flips off the music and she says, "The demise of my life as I know it doesn't need a soundtrack." Like, Tim, I don't think you understand this. And for you and for me, this are very different things. Tim like seems like excited to kind of go into this like high stakes gang situation. And Daisy's like, "I'm literally turning my back on my family. So if we could not celebrate that would be great." And she like realizes that neither of them are thinking about it this way. To them, this is a very black and white situation. Like, they're going to go in and save these kids, do the right thing, save the day. They're going to be heroes. Like, they're going to go fight the bad guys. And she's like, it is not black and white to me at all. Like, I'm going in to help these kids because I know that's the right thing to do, but I'm also betraying my family, which feels like very much the wrong thing to do. And Tim Dyson is trying to make small talk with her and also maybe acting as Tiller's wingman. He's like, Tiller's single. I don't know. Clearly, like, Tim knows that Tiller has a thing for Daisy. But they're like chatting, and then Tim says to Daisy, "Are you excited to take down the bad guys?" And Daisy says, "I am the bad guys. Like, these are my people. I am one of them, not one of you guys." They arrive at this like warehouse where Daisy is pretty sure that this is where they're keeping the kids. And Daisy's like, "Okay, Tim, you have to stay in the car." Like, it's just gonna be me and Tiller going in. Like, I don't want a loose cannon. She feels she can trust Tiller. She knows Tiller a little bit better. She can trust Tiller not to shoot anyone without her permission, but she's not sure if she can trust this other guy. And Tim is like, I don't want to stay in the car. And Daisy says to him, and I don't want to topple my family's entire dynasty, but here we are. So you're going to stay here. Julian, she's been assured that Julian is not here. They have eyes on him and he is somewhere else in the city. So we know we're not going to have to interact directly with Julian. And she turns to Tiller, and once again, she says, Tiller, you do not pull that trigger unless I say so. Like, nobody dies in this situation unless I say so. Because, like, again, we are told that, like, particularly the men closest to Julian, like Declan and TK and Miguel, like, they are her family. These are the men that raised her from the time she was, like, fairly young. Like, we're not just shooting them willy-nilly. She walks in and there's immediately a few guys Daisy doesn't recognize, which is like pretty standard. The Julian's organization is very big and she's not involved in like much outside of like the house in terms of operations, but they obviously recognize her. They know who Daisy is and they like immediately soften. They like are cool because if Daisy's here and she's bringing a guy with her, they assume that it's allowed because like she's Daisy Haites. Why would it not be? She like puts them in like a sleeper hole, that's called. I don't know. She like knocks them out. It's her business. She doesn't kill them, but she locks them unconscious. And she walks through another door, and there's TK. TK is outside of, like, the room where the kids are. And TK is like, why are you here, Daisy? And Daisy's like, Julian sent me to, And she doesn't answer, and she just, like, keeps walking towards TK. And TK is like, Daisy? And Daisy gets close enough, and she has a syringe full of propentanol, I believe, something to knock him unconscious. She knocks him out. He slumps over to the ground. And then Tiller comes around the door and they go into the room and she finds Romeo just like sitting at a table. The kids are like in the corner watching cartoons and Romeo's sitting there. He has a gun on him, obviously. And he immediately is like, Daisy, why are you here? And then he sees Tiller walk in behind her and he immediately has the gun on Tiller. And Daisy is talking to Rome and she says, this isn't who, we don't do this. This like isn't who we are, meaning the kidnapping. And Rome says, this is exactly who I am, Daisy, but I don't know who you are anymore. Because like she's acting like a traitor. That's not what they do. This is like, if we were to make like a, like I know we had like Daisy's rules, but like the rules of like crime lordery, of like organized crime, the number one rule is like you don't snitch on people. Like traitors, snitches are like the worst thing you can be. So to have Daisy here with cops, that's like, that's like so much worse than murder in their eyes. And Daisy is like, I'm not a kidnapper. And Rome is like, just a traitor then. You sleeping with him too? Gesturing towards Tiller. Okay, well, that was a little bit of a low blow, Rome. But like, again, Rome has been through the ringer, so we'll let it slide. And Daisy's like, just let them go. And Rome is like, no. And then Daisy turns to the kids and she says to them, after it's clear that Romeo is not just going to like let him leave, which, you know, that would have been nice if that happened, but it seemed unlikely. She says, hey, kids, whatever happens, go with him, pointing at Tiller. Like, he's a policeman. You can trust him. Like, just, like, leave with him. And then she turns to Tiller and she says, whatever happens, you get them out. Okay? Like, and Tiller's, like, confused. He doesn't know what's happening. They didn't really walk in with, like, a very clear plan. Mostly because Daisy didn't have a very clear plan. And so Tiller's just kind of, like, following her lead. And then she turns and she points her gun at Rome. And Rome keeps his gun pointing directly at Tiller. He can't even pretend to point a gun at Daisy. Like, there's just like nothing in him that could like point a gun at Daisy, could threaten Daisy. Like, he has loved her too much. And Rome says, this is what it's come to. You're gonna shoot me, Daisy? And Daisy goes, never. Like, she would never. She's playing. She can point a gun at Romeo, but she would never be able to shoot him. Instead, she flips the gun on herself and she shoots herself in the stomach. Like, point blank, shoots herself in the stomach. And Romeo immediately rushes over to her and he's like, what have you done? And she, like, yells for the kids to run and she tells Tiller to leave. She's, like, trying to direct them to leave as Romeo is, like, freaking out next to her as she's like bleeding onto the ground. And she's like, okay, Rome, you gotta put pressure on it, like keep pressure on it. And Romeo is like, I'm trying. And he started to like bawl. He's like crying and he's calling for help. And then that's when Daisy remembers the thing that she like forgot as she was like calculating this plan like very quickly in her head, is that like they don't do ambulances. And she wonders if she'll have enough time. Like, they don't do ambulances, and she wonders if that is the thing that's going to kill her, as, like, Romeo is, like, having a very hard time stopping the bleeding. And she turns to Rome, and she's like, I'm sorry. It's the same sorry that Romeo said to her, essentially, when they were in that hotel together. This, like, sorry for putting you in a situation where you are going to have to watch me die. And Rome says, no, don't be sorry, Daisy. Like, you hear me. Like, you stay with me. Like, we're not going to do this. And then Daisy blacks out. And then we cut over to Julian, and we get Julian like recounting his experience of getting the phone call. And he remembers like the moment so vividly, and like how much fear he felt like the moment he got the call from Rome. He says it's the worst call he had ever gotten in his life, and he can tell Romeo is like, she's bleeding, and Julian like asks who, but he doesn't really need to wait for an answer because he knows by like the panic in Rome's voice that it's Daisy. Like, the only one that he'd be this panicked about would be Daisy. And he like learns that, and as they're like on the phone, Romeo explains that like she shot herself, the cop took the kids, she came with like, she brought the cop, shot herself in the stomach, and the cop took the kids. And he's like freaking out. He's like trying to drive, but he's like shaking too much, and Kikoa makes him like scoot over, and Kikoa drives and like takes over the phone call and is like, okay, here's what's gonna happen. There's a safe house not too far from where you are. We're gonna have doctors sent over there. That's where we're gonna take Daisy till we can get her stable and then get her to the hospital. Like, Kikoa has kind of like taken over. And then we like jump to current day. It's a few days post the shooting, and Daisy is recovering really well. Julian knows that like she shot herself in the stomach intentionally because the stomach generally is like a pretty easy spot to recover from in terms of like getting hit. Like, depending on what you hit, like there's a chance you hit something major, and luckily Daisy is a med student, so hopefully she was able to avoid anything that would like cause substantial damage. But like, obviously getting shot in that way is still not great for you. But she's like doing well, and Julian is like obviously at the hospital all the time, and he walks in the hospital this morning, and Christian is down in the lobby. He's trying to go up and see her, and Julian's like, look, like the last time you guys saw each other, she like literally had you kicked out of the house. Like, I don't know if she's gonna want to see you. When she's awake, she can decide, but for now, like, I can't let you up there. Like, I can't let you up there. And Christian is like, please, like, she would want to see me. And Jules is like, no. And so, but then he goes up and he's waiting there, and Daisy's like waking up for the first time. It's like a couple days post her shooting, and she's waking up for the first time. And the first one she spots is Romeo. Her eyes land on Romeo, and Romeo like catches that she's awake, and he immediately is just like, F you, Daisy, we're done now. Like, don't ever speak to me again. And he like storms out. Like, he's been waiting all these days just to like make sure she's okay. Like, he loves her enough to make sure she's okay, but like he is so mad with her, which like, pretty rightly so. She did like almost die in front of him of her own volition. And then she turns to Julian, and Julian is like, what did you do? Like, what did you do? And Daisy starts crying, and she repeats the question back to him, like, what did you do? And Julian is like, you shot yourself in the stomach to help some kids you didn't even know. This part really gets me. Guys, I'm gonna cry. If you follow my Throne of Glass videos, I cry all the time in those, but I haven't cried, I don't think, yet in this one. Oh, but this scene in this book gets me. It really gets me. I think it's one of the bigger crying moments. I cried, if we continue the Magnolia Park series, and that white one right there, along the Into the Dark, I sobbed in that one. I don't know how to get through that one without crying. But this one, the scene like really gets me. Anyway, Julian says, you shot yourself in the stomach to help some kids you didn't even know. But I think the thing is, Daisy didn't rescue those kids for those kids, really. I mean, that was part of it. But she like rescued those kids because she was really, like, she was saving Julian. Like, I think that was like her real motivation there, was to like rescue Julian, to save him from doing something that he wouldn't be able to come back from. But Daisy responds, they were kids. And Julian's like, they were a job. And Daisy says, you promised me, never kids. And Julian like is really working hard not to cry, because there's just like a lot of emotion. Like, his little sister, his everything has been shot in the stomach, and she's better, but like, she also did the unthinkable and like betrayed him, and that feels gross. And he also knows that he again messed up. Like, he shouldn't have taken those kids, although he would never admit it. And like, she's a little bit in the right, and it's just like very messy. And Julian instead gets mad, as sometimes you ought to do. And he goes, you just lost me $70 million. And Daisy says, yeah, and you lost me. I'm out. I don't want anything to do with this shit. They were kids. I was her age when Dad died. And Julian is like, it's business, Daisy. I run a business. Like, I had to do this. I'm out. Don't speak to me. Don't call me. Don't follow me. I don't want anything to do with you. And then Julian says the line that like literally stabs me in the stomach and rips out my heart. Those are some big words for a little orphan girl. And Daisy says, I don't need you. And Julian says, you don't have anyone else. And Daisy says, I'd rather have no one than who you are now. I shrug again, this being Julian. Because I don't know what else to do. If I stop to think about what's happening, I'll probably start crying too. You're despicable, she tells me. And you're a traitor, I shoot back. Had that one locked and loaded because it's true. After everything I've done for her, the life I've given her, the ways I've shielded her and kept her safe and loved her in, I'm serious, Julian. I'm done with you. She sniffed, shaking her head. I don't want your protection. I don't want your covering or your time or your thoughts. Oh, I give her the meanest smile I have ever given her. Don't even worry about it, face. You won't have them. I give her a careless shrug. As far as I'm concerned, you died with them on that beach that day. I glare over at her. Should have let you, you ungrateful little shit. Hate myself for that. Get out, she tells me, voice shaking. I grab my keys from the table beside me with shaking hands. I hope she doesn't see. Gladly. I walk out, cover my face with my hands, and breathe out calm as I can. I get in the elevator, wait for the doors to close, and let out one sad growl. She doesn't deserve more than that from me, even though she does. I punch the face in the mirror, need stitches, but I won't get them. And then I walk away from the only family I have, and the only person besides myself that I've ever loved. Good riddance, I tell myself as I take a deep breath, but I can't shake the feeling that maybe I just got rid of the only good thing I had in me. The Daisy Julian breakup, that'll hit. that'll rip me out. Ooh. Okay. Now we're like a week post-shooting. We're a week post-shooting. Daisy is out of the hospital and Christian is going to see her. Christian tries to call her a bunch of times. He tries to call her. The number isn't going through. Like the number is like disconnected. And so he tries to like text Julian and get Daisy's new number and he just gets left on red. Like Julian ignores him. And he finds out from Jonah that Julian and Daisy had this like massive falling out and they are currently not speaking to each other. And he's heard all these rumors about what happened, that she's like working with a cop and that she betrayed her brother and that she shot herself in the stomach and like all these rumors about like what's going on. And he's not sure what's true and what's not. But then he finds out from Tara. How did Tara find out? I don't know. I'm not the boss of Tara. That Daisy has moved out, that she's gotten her own place and is living on her own now. And so he just like shows up at her door. And she opens the door and is like, hi. And Christian is like, what is going on? Like, why didn't you tell me you were moving? Like, what? Whoa. And Daisy is like, well, we weren't really on speaking terms. And Christian is like, I would have helped you move. What happened? What's the deal with your brother? Like, what happened there? And Daisy is like, he broke my rules. And Christian knows what she means because like they've had conversations around it. And he goes, I'm sorry. Like, ooh, ouch. And then Daisy is like, I love you. And Christian says, I love you too. And it's like the first time they've like exchanged I love yous. They both said I love you individually, I think. But they've never like exchanged I love yous. And it's like this very like sweet moment. They like kiss a bit, but like Daisy is still, you know, recovering from being shot in the stomach. So she's pretty banged up. And so it doesn't, you know, escalate too much. But Daisy explains like, I'm out. Like I've left. I don't want anything to do with it anymore. I don't want anything to do with that life. I want to be normal somewhere. We can go be normal together somewhere. But Christian can't. He like thinks about his family. Like Jonah is like intimately connected through like all of his clubs and his mom is connected and like he knows that this is his family legacy and he's like unwilling to leave that behind. Like it's his whole world. He would be turning his back on everyone he's ever known. And he's like thinking about it and Daisy is like, Julian is out of control. And Christian's like, it's just like it's a phase. He'll swing back. Like, he'll come back from this. And Daisy is like, not this time. At least not with me. Like, he crossed a line that there's no recovering from with me. And Christian's like, I'm not like him. Like, that's not me. He did that, but I didn't do that. And Daisy's like, yeah, you are like him. That's why I like you so much. I love that line. I think it's so sweet. And Christian says, no, but I won't break your rules. That's what he said. I mean it. So did he. And Christian's like, oh, whatever, like come live with me, come stay with me. And Daisy is like, no, like I'm done. Like I'm tired of people trying to kill me. And Christian says, baby, I can't be done. This is my whole life. Which is like, they're at this point where like they have finally like admitted their feelings for each other, but like they cannot be together. Like Daisy is unwilling to trade normalcy for Christian in this moment. And then Daisy says to him, like, she's like, I understand, like, I would never ask you to leave, but can you do me a favor? Like, when you leave, please come back. Don't come back. I, like, can't do this twice. I can't do this again. And Christian then says this, Daisy, I mean it, Christian. I need to be normal now. I don't want to be jumpy when a white van drives past me. I don't want to have to take different routes home every day. I don't want a bodyguard. I want to be able to order the same thing at restaurants every time I go there. I don't want to sleep with a fucking 45 under my pillow. Daisy, I want to be free of it, Christian. I have to be done. Please let me be done. I take a staggered breath. Act like me understanding why she's saying what she's saying makes it hurt less. It doesn't. Just push it in front of me. Just push me in front of a fucking train, why don't you? But I nod a couple times instead. Try on for size that old adage of if you love someone, let them go. Even if you've just gotten them, which I have. Even if you hate how the world feels without them, which I do. I know that now. It's a hollow in me, where she used to lie on my chest at night. Feel her gone, like how you feel dust and dirt hit your face on a windy day. I don't want to let her go. I didn't even want to love her in the first place, but now here we are, and I do. And I wouldn't take it back now. Couldn't. Even if I could, I couldn't, because I'll love her until I die. Whether I have her or not, whether she wants me back or not, I'm in, even if she's out. Okay. I nod barely. You can be done, baby. Thank you, she whispers, chin wobbling. I kiss the corner of her mouth and walk out her door, and then we do not speak for another 10 months. Yeah, and that's where we end Daisy Hates. We're gonna get like a tiny itty bitty baby bit because we get a little Magnolia as a treat at the end of this book. But that's the end of Daisy. Okay, now our little Magnolia as a treat. This chapter like really has almost nothing to do with any of the rest of the books. I finished the Magnolia cycle. Obviously there's a couple more Daisy Hates books coming out, but like we meet this new girl named Lucia in this chapter. Lucia. We meet this new girl named Lucia in this chapter, and you would think that she would become an important character. She does not. We like never see her again after this little like bonus chapter. Anyway, let me talk you through this bonus chapter. So we are catching up with Magnolia. We get this chapter from Magnolia's perspective. It's March in New York City, and Magnolia is in her Fifth Avenue apartment with Tom. And we learn that after she left the big fight with BJ at the Roseberry, she went immediately to the airport, slept there, and then flew to New York City immediately. And by the time she woke up in the morning and got on the plane, it was all over the news, all over the tabloids, because they had this big blow-up fight outside where people were recording on camera phones and like taking pictures. Like everyone knows what happened. Everyone knows that Paley and BJ were the ones that like cheated on her, and like it's pretty big news. And so she flies out to New York. Bridget follows her the next day, and so does Tom. Tom winds up flying up out there, and he is like there for her for the next months, despite their breakup. Despite the fact that just before that she had broken up with Tom, they just like kind of pretend that didn't happen, and they go back to this relationship that was forming before that. And like I said, Magnolia makes this new friend in the building named Lucia, who I don't think we see Lucia again. Watch me like look back over my notes, and like Lucia is like a major player in the third book or something, but I don't think we see Lucia ever again. But anyway, she's got like new friends in the building. She's like really enjoying New York, and then we find out that like I said, we're in March, so this has been happening for about 3 months. Tom has 4 months maybe, because she left like December 5th, and now it's mid-March, so yeah, like 3.5, 4 months. And Tom has been like splitting his time halfway between London and New York, and like living with her when he's in New York, and he's there tonight, and he's like watching TV. He's like flipping through the channels, and Back to the Future comes on, and Magnolia makes him change the channel. And Tom was like, "Is that about BJ?" And she's like, "No. I actually just think it's one of that director's like weaker movies. I just don't love it." And Tom is like, "No, I'm pretty sure it's about BJ and the fact that he has a Mandalorian tattooed on him." And she's like, no. That's definitely not it. And he's like, "Everything about you is about BJ." And he says to her, "I'm tired of loving people who don't love me back." And Magnolia's like, I do love you. And she is like, it's easy to say because like, I do. I love him. It slips off the tongue because it's the truth. I love Tom. But then Tom says, "Okay, now say you don't love him." My mouth falls open and I blink a few times, swallow, cross my arms over my chest and stare up at him, eyes all teary and defiant. Denounce him? Denounce my whole heart that lives across the Atlantic in the shape of a boy who I never want to see again, even when he's all I want to see every day. How am I to do that? If you can tell me, I'll do it. If there's a way to move past loving him how I love him, I will do it. I will do anything. And Tom rests beautifully under the umbrella of anything, but then he is so much more than that. He's everything, you might say. And still, here he is, standing in front of me, demanding me to love him in the way he deserves, which I can't do because I am tied to a boy and a tree in Dartmouth. And I hate him so much, and I worry every day that I will never love anyone more than how much I hate him. Tom breathes out a shallow breath and shakes his head at me, eyes like I gutted him. Maybe I did. And so then they break up. So we get to witness the Magnolia-Tom breakup, and it's very sad because Magnolia does love Tom, but she loves BJ more, and she doesn't know how to stop loving BJ more, even though BJ has like totally shattered her heart. And then Tom leaves, and she winds up having a panic attack, and she calls Bridget, but Bridget is in London right now, and but Bridget is able to contact Lucia, and Lucia comes over and like sits with her and calms her down, and it's okay. And then they decide to go to like a party that night. They go to this party and they bump into Rush Evans. And we met Rush earlier. We met him at one of the galas they went to. And Rush Evans, if you do not recall, is Sam England's, Tom's brother's best friend. Complicated. And Magnolia kind of explains what happened with BJ and explains what happened with Tom and like catches them all up. And then they wind up hooking up in a coat closet. And there's this like moment that things really like shift for Magnolia a little bit in this moment, because it is she slept with two people. She slept with Tom and she slept with BJ, and now she slept with Rush. And Rush is not a man she's in love with in any capacity. And we like get her mental thoughts, and she talks about how she isn't really thinking about BJ. Like, she's not mentally cataloging his tattoos, but she is thinking about all the girls that he has slept with in coat closets over the years, because they're in a coat closet. And it's this moment where like things are maybe like shifting for Magnolia and her, and how she's like trying to untangle herself from BJ, and maybe like another relationship isn't the way to do it. Maybe like she needs to have, maybe she needs to try BJ's method on for size. And so I think that's the current plan. Okay, we did it. It took 900 years, but we did it. We have gone through everything that happens in Magnolia Parks and Daisy Haites. I do have, at some point, I would love to continue in the series. We've got 3 more books that are out. If you've watched this one and you want me to keep going, let me know in the comments if you have a preference between me doing the tandem like this. I actually think the tandem makes a lot more sense for these second 2 books, because they're pretty closely intertwined, because we have some major character crossovers. If you know, you know, for these next 2 books. And then obviously I would do the last book by itself, because it's the only one that's out in the current moment. I think it'll be a minute before we get to the next Daisy Haites. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this series, I would love if you subscribed or liked this video. And liked this video. You can do both, actually. You can push as many buttons as you want. Love to chat in the comments, because then it feels like I'm like having some friends over and we're chitting and chatting at my little book club, at the Really Pop book club. Okay, great. Thank you so much for listening to me ramble on for 17 hours about these book series that I love so very, very much. I will see you in the next video. Bye.